Happy Sunday, SMITE fans, and welcome back in to the SPL. Dolson and Gormizer. Gore, we're hanging out all day today, but we're starting things off on the desk here in what has been a pretty competitive weekend so far on the SPL, but not surprising given how the games have been recently.
Yeah, I mean, what we've maybe been most surprised by is Radiance, although after a little while of non-competitive play, maybe trying to just get back into it in this first set, maybe a good chance for them to prove it. But realistically, it's Renegades, it's E-United, it's Obey, the ones that have been punching upwards now, I think, that are really causing the upset. Knights have been doing very well. I mean, the conversation that we were having at the end of Phase 1, even at the beginning of Phase 2 here, was that it kind of felt like there were 4 teams and 4 teams. Now there's 2 teams and 6 teams that hang out at the bottom. Right. I mean, anybody and from 3rd through 8th can take a game off of each other. And I think a lot of them have a chance at maybe taking a game off of Ghost, maybe scrapping with SSG, although that one's a little different because so far they've only lost to Ghost Gaming this phase.
When you look at the standings there, very important that kind of 4th, 5th spot as well. PK, as of right now, holding that 4th spot, but Sanguine against Obey to round out our day could tie it back up in there, and then all of our head-to-head tiebreaker fun stuff happens there. But definitely one to keep your eyes on as we round out the weekend. But first, Gore, Ghost versus Radiance, and this Ghost squad on a 3-game win streak, a small stumble a week before that, or a game before that, rather, against the Renegades. But they're starting to hit their stride again, and they're looking convincing while they do it.
Yeah, I mean, very, very comfortable, I think is the best way to describe it, right? This is a team that has not only been playing their own style, but they've got a pretty wide variety when it comes down to their god pool. And honestly, the 2 members that you always look at, you know, Fine OK, put them on anything, you're going to have a good time. Same thing for Twig right now. It kind of feels like no matter what, you can always count on him. Sometimes he's going to be that hyper-aggressive player that we're maybe kind of poking fun at in Phase 1 on the Raijin, always dashing forward. I've seen a few highlights of him as Hebo ulting in first before anybody else on his team is going to be there. Right. And, you know, him and Panda Cat are always there to be your carries, but it really is, you know, the PBM, the Sam for Soccer in this matchup that I'm keeping my eyes on, because their matchup is maybe going to be a little bit easier for them. You know, we know what PBM can do if you give him maybe a free lane and just let him start popping off early, find some kills. And the same thing for Sam, if he's able to find a lot of good ganks or if he's able to invade your jungle consistently, he becomes a menace. It becomes very difficult to handle very fast, and that's where you get those, you know, 20, 22-minute Ghost Gaming games when those 2 really do just get far and off ahead in the first, like, 3 minutes.
Right. And the Ghost has the potential to do that today against their opponents in Radiance. Radiance on a 4-set losing streak, back-to-back 0-2 losses. Important to look at. That was on Friday. And now they have to draw Ghost. Gore, what's it been with this Radiance team? I mean, obviously a little bit of an extended break, now making up some of their games. It's just maybe the pace has slowed down for these guys. I don't know if you can pin it on any 1 or 2 players specifically. The whole team seems to have slowed down, but you know, I think Adapting has had a hard time finding his mojo recently, maybe Aurora as well.
Yeah, that's actually why I wanted to look at PBM and Sam for Soccer coming into this more than anything, because when you look at the opposition, I mean, go back and watch the games from Friday and specifically look at Adapting, look at Aurora. They're not having these great games. Aurora is not necessarily playing things that we're known or used to seeing him on. That Terra year-long for Radiance is a 50% win rate, but this weekend for Radiance is 0%. So they've been going to these picks that I'm wondering if they're testing the waters for the future or if they are just trying to ease themselves back into it. Either way, it doesn't seem like things have been going great for them there, and that's where I think Ghost Gaming are going to be able to win it. Other than that, you know, you're still looking at big man teams to maybe be kind of this central pillar for them, but without Adapting, kind of picking up some of the slack, jungle right now is making such a huge difference that I think just not having enough Adapting in there might be enough to give Ghost this game pretty fast.
Yeah, this Radiance team almost feels like one of those high school physics problems. It's the kinetic versus potential energy. Their potential energy is off the charts, but they got to convert some of that into kinetic energy. They got to get things moving here. Coach Biggie, we were able to sit down with him. Maybe he has an idea on how to get some of that energy converted over into wins.
All right, we've got the coach for Radiance, Biggie, joining us now. And Biggie, we can call a spade, man. Things have not been going super well for you guys as of late. From the coach's perspective, what do you think the biggest problems for your team have been these last few sets?
I think I mean, I feel like from an outsider's point of view, maybe it looks worse than it is. For us, we feel like we're kind of close to winning, but we just, at times, we just look so sloppy just for like small increments where we just lose games and then we kind of just let teams walk over us. But I mean, honestly, we're just not playing well like as a team, and we kind of, even though I feel like we drafted fine for most of the games, I still like we're still not exactly sure like what we want to play after taking the break from a few weeks ago, and I don't know, I feel like the same as last split. We're just slumping hard, and it might take us a bit more time, and we haven't had exactly a lot of quality practice since coming back, so I feel like it's just going to take us maybe another week or two to kind of get back to form.
Are you concerned at all with this current slide? Because you mentioned phase one. That's where I was going to bring this as well, because you guys did have a pretty low point during phase one and then clearly picked it up, finished second at phase one playoffs. Does that run being fresh in your memory kind of assuage some of your worries right now? It's not too big of a deal?
Not really. It does feel similar to split one, but it was, I don't like using the break as an excuse, but I do think it killed a lot of our momentum and a lot of people's motivation, and we did feel like we came back and we were a bit behind the meta, like we're not sure exactly what we want to do, and we're not sure exactly what other teams are doing, or like we're just not sure what's good really yet for us, or like when we play certain teams, so it's definitely worrying. We're definitely not a team, like we don't like losing, so we definitely want to be winning again, but we're not. I wouldn't say it's like pleasing to remember what happened last split. We kind of need to turn it around quicker. Otherwise, if we keep slumping, we might not even. I don't know. It might be like really difficult for us to even qualify for Worlds. So.
Well, hopefully you guys can get off to a good start here today against Ghost, a team that looks like they're really hitting their stride. This Ghost team, everyone kind of identifies them as the early game team. Do you share that same view? Do you think that that's where their strength really lies, is in that early game?
I mean, yeah, for sure. I think the way they want to play the game is, like they kind of just want to control the whole game, right? I think when you have such a strong early game, it's easy to be kind of recognized as that team, but they also are a good late game team. Obviously, they have a lot of good players, so they just kind of, more than any other team, have that ability to blow you out in 20-25 minutes, or kind of actually like in the first 10 minutes. So, but the weird thing for us is I feel like before we usually were like a pretty bad early game team, and then we were having terrible late games. And right now we've had good early games and we've had leads against like most of the teams, I feel like, but we've just completely thrown, or when we were in good positions, we just didn't do anything with it. So. I don't know, which is kind of a good thing, but it's also, we're obviously losing every late game and losing every game, so hopefully we can just switch that late game and as well like get through the early game against a team like Ghost.
Looking forward to it, Biggie. Good luck today, and hopefully you guys can turn it around soon.
Thanks.
I think a good point by Biggie there, that this sort of happened in phase one, and then they go the entire distance with this Ghost team that they're playing today in that mid-season tournament. So if you're going to be playing, rough Smite, now's the time to be doing it so you can peak later on in the year. Let's see if picks and bans, though, for these two teams. In game number one, tell us the story of what direction they might be looking to play here in this one. And Gore, we highlighted Sanford Soccer, we highlighted PBM, same roles on the other side as well for Radiance, adapting and Aurora, obviously. I think those are going to be some of the most important picks here in this draft, as far as getting something for adapting, getting something for Aurora, that can get those wheels turning again.
And honestly, I think that's what it is. We have been, like, when you look at the recent games for Radiance, it's just not been good. There's no way to highlight that any other way. Like, if you go back and look at them, they have not been cleanly playing. It's not the team we were used to seeing in phase one. And so it was a very hot and cold dynamic, right? They came in, they hit that break where their games got postponed, and it felt like everything had a full stop. And Biggie even kind of said that, where it felt like a couple of, like, the morale kind of started to get lost in there. But if you roll it back to before all of that happened, one of the 3 losses that Ghost Gaming has been handed was to Radiance, right? And this is the second time they've played this phase. So there is that potential, and we've seen it often, and we've seen it before. They 2-0'd them last time. So it is something that Radiance has been able to showcase. I do think it is much like you said, just get a roar onto something comfortable. Maybe at the same time try to get PBM off of anything comfortable and try to shake things up in the jungle, get adapting on something you know he can carry on, you know he's going to be comfortable on, and that will just make this team flourish a little bit more, or at least put up more of a fight than we've got to see out of the last few sets they've played.
And I think as well in that interview with Biggie, a lot of we need to just play our game, get back to our play style is definitely an important factor, I think, that he brought up there. Definitely agree. The potential for this team off the charts. That's going to be the buzzword, I think, for this set core is the potential of these two teams. Let's catch back up, though, with the bans that we've seen here. Hebo Yamoja taken away by Radiance. No surprise with the Yamoja, and then Olaron. So, really, Gore, a couple of bans targeting Captain Twig out there in the mid lane. Maybe not all that surprising, given how Twig has been kind of a consistent force maybe for this Ghost team.
Yeah, again, I think that's one of those things that it's very weird to think about because sometimes you look at Twig's stats. I've even, I memed him a little bit yesterday for it. And sometimes his stats just won't come out and look the best. But he'll still be an important factor for them winning. I think yesterday was the Persephone, but when you put him on the Olaron, you put him on the Hebo. Like, the Hebo specifically has won them so many games. That's probably the best ban that Radiance have down there. But I think there's a lot to be said that comes out of the mid lane for both of these teams, but specifically for Twig, that is game-changing, that whether or not it comes directly from him that then changes the game. Whether it's someone around him, if he sets up Sam, that's great. And I think that's what that Olaron was doing. The last time we saw it, had a lot of phenomenal ults. I think he ended up losing one of the games with it, but still looked solid, so I like those targeted bans.
Agreed. I think it takes a lot of the playmaking that Ghost has had off of the table. Cupid locked in for PandaCat. I think PandaCat has had a really good series of games on the 3-game win streak that Ghost is on right now. Cupid especially, I think, a very strong tool, piece of utility with that ultimate, not only damage-wise, but lockdown-wise, slows down a lot of what Radiance might be looking to do. Now, how about this, the Awilix Gore for Sam for Soccer. Sam has played this pick recently. I believe it was a 7-1 performance. I'll have to confirm that in just a sec. Unconventional, but something we have seen work for Sam out of the jungle.
Yeah, again, like you said, not picked up too often, tends to find success when they pick it. The same thing there for the Cupid, they're 4-1 with him. The thing that's almost surprising to me is, like, just, again, looking towards numbers, Persephone and Olaron is up there as well, but Persephone's the most banned god by Radiance, so we don't get to see them often play against it. We don't often get to see them play with it either, so I'm really excited to see how this comes through. I think their top 2 is a great way to start things up. But I'm looking at Cupid, Wheelix, Hercules. That's a lot of early game pressure. That Rom, I don't care who's in lane with him, he's going to be feeling the pain throughout all of this. Sam, I anticipate maybe making a swing over to that duo lane pretty early on, and that's a scary thought.
Yeah, I lied to you guys. It was a 7-2 performance. On the Wheelix. So
get it out of here.
One extra death, right? Send it out on the other side. I am very surprised, Gore. I mean, this is a matchup between PBM and Aurora, where Hercules, one way or another, has been consistently banned out in the past. So I'm surprised it makes its way through here for all the reasons you listed there. So much pressure for Ghost in the early. Amaterasu, I like this for Benji. I think getting something, we talk about how adapting, can pick up a little bit. We know what he's capable of. Haven't quite seen it. Benji as well. I think this Amaterasu out of the solo lane is going to be a good point for Radiance to maybe build up some pressure.
And I really I think where a lot of the focus shifts, you get unarguably for Radiance, 3 of the best gods in role that they've been able to pick up. Rom, the only person who really fights over there is Cupid. Persephone is touted, especially by all of the pros, as the best mid laner, one of the most banned. Amaterasu has been up there, although there's definitely been conversation around her and Wukong lately that maybe is some shaky ground. And then you ban out specifically things you're targeting at Finoke. Well, this hover, Dave, I'm going to have to break it in because this was banned against them. It was a very weird note. And it sounded like something for Finoke.
As much as it could be,
it feels like it would come through. Yeah, Friday, saying when they're banning this Anubis, everyone's like, what are they doing? What do they know that we don't? Had to be something in scrims. I guess we finally get to see it. But I really it sounds weird. And I understand it, but
right.
I feel like it could be a solo Anubis. That at least it felt like something going towards Fine. Okay, it depends on what they lock in here, whether it goes to Twig or not. And it does seem now that potentially going more in mid lane.
Huh.
I actually like it dealing with this Khepri. I like the damage Anubis can do. His lifesteal is ridiculous. It remains to be seen. I'm not going to touch it too much just because of the fact that, look, there's a reason we've gone all year without him being picked. But I do think he's got some merit to him that's going to bring some interesting flavor to the game.
And you know, Anubis carries some of the same worries that, like the Mulan does. When you're in that ult, you're rooting yourself for a little while towards the end of it. Anubis has some of those same worries as well. Now Camazot's being locked in for Radiance. Do you think there's enough jump onto the Anubis that might make Ghost panic a little bit?
Early on, yes, but mainly from Camazotz. Like, I think Persephone and Camazotz should have a little bit of pressure there, but that's the awkward thing, is he's going to be able to farm safely, especially with Wheelix over there as well. Like, he's not too stressed out. The minute you get lifesteal items online, you don't really care too much that you're rooting yourself. You can usually heal a lot. And that's the thing I think Anubis is going to be able to bring. Even with this Camazotz, who has pretty stellar sustain, I don't know that that's going to make as big a factor for him. I want to know the build. I want to know the reasoning. I think Ghost have something good, because Sanguine, again, would not ban it against this team unless they had done something ridiculous with it. And this is just going to be a good showcase, I think, of what Anubis can bring to the Pro League.
Well, game number 1 between Ghost and Radiance. A team trying to right the ship. Ghost trying to keep that win streak going. Finch and Aggro on the call.
Thanks, Dolson and Goran. Of course, Ghosts are going to bring us something exciting into this game number 1 here with Finch and Aggro. Make sure you're voting for us in chat on who you think is going to win as well. Anubis mid here for Captain Twig. But Ryan, this feels to me kind of like something you want a 10th pick. At least when you know what the enemy jungler is. I mean, shouldn't Camazotz be able to shred this Anubis?
It isn't a great matchup for Anubis, but how many matchups really are? That's what I'm saying. If you're willing to pick this Anubis, you've got to be willing to pick it into some matchups that you aren't going to love. But I think that this can work. I've been playing a little bit of Anubis myself recently. Twig did inspire me. He has a diamond border Anubis in ranked. It's been tearing up the ranked scene as of late. Look, he still does all the things that makes Anubis good. He does more damage than anyone else ever. He's got insane objective shred. He can kill tanks really easily. He's got all the same weaknesses at the same time, but I don't mind it. I'm cool with Ghost going for it. If you can consistently land those mummifies, you're going to be really, really helpful to your team.
Oh, Mike, this is not the start you're looking for. Narrowly avoids any more trouble. They're level 1. So they don't have quite the same chase potential they might have later. But I'm with you, man. I am interested in what this Anubis can do here for them in this game. And think about the way that Twig likes to play. He likes to play these high-risk, high-reward, sort of all-in characters in the mid lane, as perhaps Radiance's recent struggles are the reason this is leaning so heavily in favor of Ghost, 80-20 in terms of that fan vote. But I think that this kind of fits in exactly the way that Twig has kind of grown into the mid-role here. He likes to play these gods with potential to 1v1 you, or maybe even 1v2, even if it does come at some heavy risk.
I mean, how vastly different are Anubis and Hebo as characters in the mid lane, right? I mean, they're kind of similar in what they bring. It's just that Anubis is much, much better around objectives and slightly less safe, but Hebo isn't exactly a safe god anyways. That's not what you're picking him to do.
Adapting has shown some presence here in duo. Looks like Sam knew, though. He's also lurking in the jungle, but no actual ganks showing up on this left side yet. So the duo lane's still okay for now, but not really the only thing worth keeping our eye on here, I don't think, is just this Anubis here in mid. Sam playing this Awelish, which is another pick that has been around the fringes, but we've seen it, certainly a good bit more than the Anubis. But this Awelish pick, when you pair it alongside this Hercules, the potential for the knockups there, with some of the leaps that are over there for Radiance as well that he can try and punish out of the jungle, this feels like Sam and Anubis, or Sam and Twig, are on picks that might be even a little bit odd, but certainly fit their playstyle and give them some good options coming here into this game.
And the Awelix, even though it was picked pretty early, has a lot of pretty good targets, the Persephone in particular, but adapting on this Camazotz as well can get locked down pretty easily with the CC chain, and that's the big deal in this match, is the CC chain potential out of Ghost's draft. It isn't just about, the Awelix gravity surge after the Herc driving surge, Earthbreaker. It's Herc Earthbreaker into a Willix Gravity Surge, into a Mummify, into a Driving Strike. You just can't survive that amount of damage and CC coming at you at the exact same time, which is why Aurora on this Khepri is going to be critical to not only get those reses, but just sometimes the cleanse could be important.
Sam rotated over, but not going to be able to find anything in duo. He'll settle in quotes, for the purple buff invade to start trying to set Aurora and Cyclone Spin behind. And I don't think we give quite enough credit to what this Wheelish pick can do for the Hercules player, not just in that there's the obvious synergy, but I think he can open up that kit a little bit more. So often Hercules feel like they have to use the 2-1 combination, but when you know you've got someone else following up off the 2, it kind of frees you up to use that driving strike a little bit differently, to be willing to be aggressive with it right away in the engagement or save it for later for displacement. It adds some extra depth to the way this Hercules can work. His Ting's in trouble and nearly getting soloed there in mid. Twig just barely doesn't have the damage with boots too.
That is great. He's got Blink. Oh, Tings, we gotta be a little bit more ready for that, my guy. He'll get a return kill onto him, but that's still first blood coming for Captain Twig.
That's exactly how Captain Twig's gonna play this Anubis. In my head, I don't know why I was so surprised that's how Twig's playing it, but the willingness to blink under the mid tower, who needs beads or egg, is certainly not Twig on the Anubis, and making it work there in mid. And that's what this pick can do. It has that damage potential. If you get hit by the Mummify and you're not ready, you're going to fall there. This is giving us a look back at it. Tings, I think, held on to the beads throughout that whole fight.
He did. I was gonna comment on that he's a braver man than I to hold on to his purification beads for as long as he did. He still has them, and now Twig doesn't have his relic, which is that blink pickup. So in that sense, it isn't as bad of a trade for Radiance, but Anubis wants to get to the point where he's ahead because that allows him to stand his ground and fight a whole lot better, especially if Twig can finish off either a Bancrofts or a Typhons really early. He's already at full boots and Talon Trinket. That is a massive influx of power and gold that he has, and it's going to make it a lot easier for him to, if he's getting dove, just say, all right, I'll go into my Death Lighthouse stance and just spread that ultimate everywhere and just try and out-trade you. Before that anti-heal comes online, it's going to be impossible to out-trade what Twig is putting out right now.
It's going to be impossible for Benji to get that blue buff, too. That was stripped away by FineOK. I think Solo, even with adapting, rotating over to try and stop it. So nice buff control here for Ghost throughout this early game. And a lot of the times we get to that 9-10 minute mark and one of these teams will have a lead even without that many kills. It comes from things like this, is adapting is considering a gank over in solo, but FineOK still has the ultimate. Should be okay, you'd think, here in this matchup, but they're all in it. The stun ends up landing. Adapting cannot lock him down, and FineOK makes it out of there easy.
They're just not a great gank target for adapting right now. As long as FineOK has that ultimate, I just don't see a world in which he can actually get that kill. FineOK can be baited in order to use it if Benji uses Dazzling Offensive, but if you don't have Dazzling Offensive, how are you killing him?
Perfect gank here from Sam. I thought they let Cyclone Spin get too close to the tier 1 tower, but not when you're landing like that. And another example of the beads not being used there early enough. At the very least, he's got them now. But to be fair, if you don't get it right before the knockup, it's probably just too late.
Yeah, agreed. If Cyclone doesn't pre-beads that knockup, and frankly, even if he does pre-beads that knockup, he could be dead anyways. I like Cyclone's decision to hold on to the relic in that situation. I think it's the right call. It doesn't feel great to be on the respawn screen looking at your beads up and ready to go, but it feels an awful lot better than knowing that you're on the respawn screen, your beads are now down, and Sam's going to be coming the exact same way as soon as he backs and resets and buys some items. It's the right call for him to hold in that spot.
It'll be a bit safer next time, if there is a next time. Sam has moved around the map efficiently so far, really helping to control this left side when that purple buff has been continually invaded. They're going to group up here at red, and if they want to, they should have the timing and information to start moving up towards that purple buff, and that is certainly where it looks like they're heading. Mike and Sam for Soccer moving together throughout the jungle, perfectly in time for this purple buff invade. And that's what Ghost does so well, man. They know how to be there on time, how to get there ahead of you, how to demand that you show up with plenty of resources to defend. Cyclone Spin tries the ultimate just to contest, but it's too late. Sam has already taken.
And I'm surprised the Radiance weren't there to defend that because they had just done red buff. They had just gotten, it was adapting in Tings, who do red, and then they both started walking into the right side jungle with nothing up, and then they're just out of position for the purple buff. That is just a mistake that you really shouldn't be making at this level. You've got to know your timers, and whether that's on Cyclone not communicating his own purple timer, a lot of times it's that laner's responsibility to relay that information to their jungler and towards their mid laner and support, the people who are going to be coming over to help them. But that was definitely a mistake from Radiance. They should have been there to at least feign a contest on purple. Maybe you feel like you can't fight at this position, and so you're willing to give it up. But if that's the case, then Cyclone probably shouldn't be ulting for it. You know, it just feels like they're on different pages right now on Radiance's side.
And Radiance is in a slump. There's no two ways about it. They have struggled these last couple of weeks since coming back from that extended break that they had to take. And you wonder if some of those small things are part of what's contributing to it, right? If they're not on time
Definitely.
for their buff defenses, if they're not communicating quite as cleanly as they used to. This is a strong team talent-wise. I am not long-term worried about their ability to bounce back, but in the short term, as Aurora gets grabbed, they're looking weak. The ultimate is enough to force Aurora into using his own. Boulder is there, gets the double tap, and it's just barely not enough damage. Now the Sipes coming in from Cyclone Spin, and Mike is the one in some trouble, but adapting, having trouble finding the range. There's that ultimate from Tings way off the mark, and Bat out of Hell is used just to keep adapting alive.
3 ults for 2, and Ghost are the ones with the pressure as PandaCat continues to try and surge forward.
It is enough for Sam to come in and strip away that red buff, so their buff control continues. But now, Radiant should be aware that purple is coming up. Sam and Cyclone are here, but they don't have Polar Mike as they normally do. Perhaps adapting and Cyclone Spin are enough to deter Ghost. It looks that way. And this might be the first purple buff of the game for Cyclone Spin as Radiant's finally able to defend that farm. But look at this call. Everyone's going back to lane and resetting. Radiants are not going to make it here in time. This Gold Fury is free.
And this is what Anubis brings. Fantastic objective DPS, and that secures it easily for Ghost. Just that little interaction in mid where Aurora is forced to use his ultimate, Radiance just a little bit slow to decide what they want to do. If they want to be the aggressors, Cyclone going to get punished for trying to be the aggressor on this left-hand side as Sam continues to put his weight in the duo lane. Radiant's a little bit slower on the uptake than they normally are. I think that's what's really hurting them.
Mike, surrounded by 3, is dashing forward, makes it out of there okay. But you talked about how Sam is spending his time on left. I think that's because he easily can. FineOK has dominated solo as perfect combination here in mid. Aurora pulls back in, knock up there as well to go along with the boulder, and he has no Scarab's Blessing this time, so Twig gets the kill. Adapting comes back in and catches the hands. The ultimate from the Anubis, plus the damage from Sam too much. Now Benji coming back in. He got here a little bit ahead of Fine, so that means he does get at least 1 kill in the 2-for-1. But FineOK healthy is going to dive. Fatal Strike Fine to nothing, and now he's stuck on the wrong side of the Tier 1 tower.
And Cyclone's here, but he's only level 9. I mean, he's putting a lot of auto attacks in, but he's going to need to use the ult as well.
But that third one wasn't enough damage when he missed the first 2 shots, so FineOK lives, regroups with Sam. They're both low, 1 on health, 1 on mana, so Cyclone Spin rolls in, looking for the shots through the wall, but just can't find it. Radiance, even when it's gifted to them, they're not quite able to lock it up, and at this point, part of it is just the numbers, aggro. They don't have enough damage, even when they are in the right spots.
And that is worst case scenario for Cyclone Spin, to spend all that time trying to kill FineOK, uses the ultimate. He is already so far down, and his reward is splitting half a wave with Benji. That's all he gets for that rotation. Whereas PandaCat gets a ton on this left-hand side, just more farm all to himself without anyone to have to compete with, all by himself on this left-hand side. 3-level deficit now for Cyclone Spin in this duo lane, and against someone like Cupid, who pushes leads really, really well with all that kill potential that he has, just the outright base damage from Heart Bomb and from Fields of Love. Good luck. No coincidence that Aurora is sitting here with him now, because I just don't think that he can step up at all.
especially when Cyclone Spin's ult's down, it's just free for PandaCat with the Fields of Love, at least to force out the Relic. So he needs that backup, at least for the meantime, and probably even a little bit afterwards. So that's just good heads-up awareness from your support. Do I sound like a hunter who's been abandoned over there, perhaps? But yeah, got to make sure that you know that he can eventually hold that lane on his own if you cover him in that little bit of meantime. So way ahead right now are Ghost, about a 3k gold lead. The experience deficit is also a problem. Good news is, though, that Benji rotated over early as Pyromancer gets started up. I say get started up. This will be confirmed with all that Anubis objective damage. But at least the good news was that Benji was able to out-rotate FineOK once, come over and find a kill, and close up that gap a bit in solo.
They needed someone to start making plays because they're down 4k at 13 minutes, and it has felt larger than that at times in my mind. It just has not been a good start for Radiance, and when you're slumping, I don't know if there's a team you want to go against less than Ghost, who have the keenest smell for blood in the league. They end games awfully quickly, and that's sometimes the most damaging to your mental when you get blown out in 22 minutes.
Well, no world where Cyclone Spin lives there. PandaCat gets the solo kill. Hard to get excited when he's up 4 levels, but yeah, he won that trade as one would expect. PandaCat will take down the tier 1 tower in left in response, and Radiance, this left side lane, this dual lane, it's forfeit at this point. There is no salvaging it, so perhaps Radiance have to look elsewhere if there's anywhere they can hope to find some farm, as Sam now strips away the purple buff, splitting that with PandaCat, and they can't even go to Fury because it's down. They've already done Pyro. Ghost, one of the few teams in the league that have this problem, but sometimes they've taken so much farm off the map, there's not a lot left for them to get.
Nowhere to go for farm right now besides farming the enemy, and that looks like it might be the idea here for PCAT and Sam, but maybe not. Decides to just stick for the tier 2 tower. I thought they were going to try and lay the trap coming out of the jungle for Cyclone as he was coming back to lane.
Well, we thought Radiance would go somewhere else. It looks like the answer is solo, but FineOK defends the blue buff as PBM does enough to pull the attention from Radiance away from blue. Fine secures it. Really not a whole lot for them to get there, but now Sam for Soccer bullying Cyclone Spin at this point. Another death, 0-4 for the one-time best player in the world. It's not been his game. It's not been Radiance's game. It's not been the last 2 weeks here for Radiance. It's really nothing has worked for them as they've been trying to find their balance. Aurora stuck in the Fields of Love, knocked up. Scarab's blessing on himself to try and stay alive. It doesn't even proc, but it does get him out of there as Ghost, really PandaCat, and Sam dare someone to come over to their lane.
Yeah, these are the games that are just no fun for you anymore when you're Radiance. Like SMITE, look, SMITE at the end of the day, it's a job for these guys, but you're having a good time, you know, you're having fun. Not in games like this. There is no fun part of a game like this if you're Radiance. I mean, Mike is the same level as Adapting now in the jungle. He's playing Hercules with Thorns. That is more damage than Adapting can do. It is not possible for Adapting to kill PBM by himself right now. He would need an awful lot of support. And I don't know how many members it would really take to kill him, because with the tank boots that he has, now Sledge straight into regrowth, which I love. I love when teams really identify the position that they're in. And Mike's not trying to scale with Thebes. He's trying to end the game in the next 6 minutes. So I don't need to worry about stacking. Give me the most impactful item right now. Just like what Twig has done with this Stone of Binding in the mid lane. If I'm going to try and kill people off of my stun, then I might as well just get cheap, efficient pen for it right away. And Binding gives that to him instantly.
Mike is able to blink past Cyclone Spin's damage. Cyclone Spin still has the ultimate, the beads, and the Aegis. So he should at least be able to get back towards the tier 2, but Ghost have rotated over with presence this time. Sam, PBM, PandaCat all here. If they want to force down the tier 2 tower, it is theirs because no one could stop them. So Radiance's response is to send 4 people over to solo and just give up on duo, as I'd already kind of said might be the call. And that is trouble now for Fine. Grasp of Death there, but Fatal Strike gets him out of there. The root lands from max range, and FineOK falls. So the 4-man rotation to solo proves fruitful as FineOK can't live through.
And I can hear the solo laner in my mind right now. Guys, there's 4 people over here, and it's like, yes, man, we know that there can be 4 people. We're grouped up at their tier 2 and duo at 17 minutes. You're the only one who they can even hit.
Sam looking for this kill up against big man Tings. Maybe Mike can pick up the mantle as Tings has to backstep to avoid the pull. Scarab's blessing is there, but so patiently awaited by Ghost, and Sam ends up getting the kill. Aurora melts like butter behind it, and Tings, even in the death form, can't hope to do much here. Now, Fire Giant certainly in the cards for Ghost, this far up, this much in control. Looks like they want to grab the Tier 1 tower first, even perhaps a back coming out. They think better of that. Take the Tier 1 tower and just keep right on pushing. Maybe they want to go for the Tier 2. Fire Giant is for teams that have plans 10 minutes from now. Forcing down Tier 2 is when I want to win right away, and that's what Ghost are trying to do.
Okay, so our post-game segment will take probably like 7 to 8 minutes. So yeah, 10 minutes from now, Ghost is planning to be in picks and bans for game number 2. They're just going to strip as much gold from the map as they possibly can and set themselves up for a fire. Now, they don't have great secure for the FG. That's not exactly what their competition is designed to do, but at this point, if Radiance step up, they're going to lose the fight whether they get fire or not. Your best plan, if you're Radiance, I think, is to just send Cyclone maybe to try and snipe it away. Maybe Adapting goes on the suicide mission in order to try and kill the objective, because you cannot show up in numbers to try and defend an FG at this point when you're down nearly 10K at 18 minutes.
No, it's a losing effort. More than a losing effort. It's something you know can't work from minute 1. So this Fire Giant should belong to Ghost, though Benji nearby is going to try some kind of defense here on it, but Mike doing a good job controlling him. Fields of Love is there. It ends up getting low, and Radiance take it away, so Benji gets in, strips it away with the Heavenly Reflection, only doing 220 damage. So as you said, no big confirm on Ghost despite having great burn. And they do it relatively risk-free. It's just Benji that's over there, and he makes it out of there safely.
There's a pulse for Radiance. They've got a pulse right now. That puts them back in it, and as Benji was trying to do that, they were a little bit better spread out. They were getting more farm. That puts them only 6K behind at 19 minutes. This is just a bad mistake, though, by Ghost. Once Mike misses that driving strike, you've just got to wait. You just can't put it in range for Benji in this point. Why not just stop DPS entirely and take the fight and kill Benji? You aren't exactly low. You don't have to worry about losing the engagement to the Radiance team that's coming in. I don't think Twig was really there for the most part in that fight. Definitely just a mistake by Ghost that they probably aren't that worried about making a mistake when they're up by this much, but as bad as Radiance has been these last 2 weeks, they're still filled with 4 world champions. These are guys who know how to make comebacks. Can't leave the door open for too long. I don't think the door is that open, for the record, but it is still open when it probably should be.
Now Benji, the focus in mid, has been caught out by Twig, but they look at Mike instead, and Mike melts quickly. This bridge build we talked about does not make him super tanky. Now Twig taking a bunch of damage. The snipes from Cyclone Spinner there, and Benji gets the kill credit. Suddenly a 2 for 0 showing up, in Radiance still have fire around their waists. They're going over towards Primal, and Ghost, who just finds Sam and Panda Cat, might just have to give this up.
Yeah, it should be a give up here for Ghost, and it seems like everyone's on the same page except for FinoK, who's going to try and steal it away. He's got to be careful, though. I mean, there's a frost out here for Benji. FinoK has to use Fatal Strike just to get out of that slow coming from Benji's auto attacks. Maybe a bit too many mistakes consecutively for Ghost. Radiance on a roll.
I mean, that fight around the fire and letting Benji in to steal it, that's going to really hurt. And then obviously in mid, being so desperate when Radiance are going to group up, it's the only chance they have of winning any fights right now. Ends up exposing him a little bit, and now Benji hunting down Sam. Sam's very fast on Suku, gets over the wall and should be safe. But where do Radiance elect to go with this little bit of Fire Giant they have? Yes, they've gotten a couple fights to go their way, but I still don't know if they want to go looking for a 5v5 under one of Ghost's towers. So they might just take this time where the Fire Giants help them out to farm up a little bit, close this gap in. The experience gap is going to get pretty close to meaning nothing here soon, as Adapting almost level 20, Big Man Ting's only a level behind Twig, and Panda Cat and Cyclone's been getting closer in experience. It'll really just be the gold, and that still is a problem that Radiance had to worry about.
It is going to be a problem for them, but at this point, I think they've gotten all the gold they can really get from this Fire Giant. Ghost is now going to group and prevent Radiance from taking towers for free. So now Radiance has to resume the uphill climb, and it is still an uphill climb for them, but if Ghost continue to play this sloppy, then they've got a real opportunity to come back and win this game. Like you said, Ghost just did not respect the Radiance was going to group. Now Ghost should all be on the same page. You know, when you lose Fire, it's, oh man, we're trolling, we lost Fire, okay, whatever. And then Mike gets picked in mid, and then Twig gets picked in mid, and then Radiance get a Primal Fury. And it's someone's job on the team to be like, okay, fellas, we gotta get locked in again, we gotta refocus a little bit, because frankly, when Ghost was pulling Fire, they're at 99% to win the game.
Right.
You know, that game is effectively over. I was thinking about how I wanted to joke around for the last, 4 minutes of them sieging and ending. I was deciding what I wanted to talk about. Now I have to remember how to cast a competitive SMITE game, because that's what this is turning back into, because of some good plays by Radiance and some mistakes by Ghost.
It just goes to show that even in the middle of a slump, the Radiance will capitalize if you make some mistakes. I think perhaps giving a little bit more credence to those wins we saw earlier, that those teams were cleanly closing out those games, and Radiance was trying to find openings, but there just weren't that many. Looks like Pyromancer going to be started up here by Ghost. They secure this one. Radiance are nearby. They're still down about 6,000 gold. How do you feel about this defense from Radiance? Do you want a soft defense? Should they be trying to take it, or should they even just fall back to Phoenixes and let this one go?
It's tough from this position, because we haven't seen what Ghost's 5-on-5 is going to look like with this composition.
Right.
And you don't know exactly how effective Twig is going to be able to be in the midst of a 5-on-5. Anubis is much better in 3v3 skirmishes, where he can just insta-kill one person and swing the numbers in his team's favor. In situations like this, how well can Radiance play around Twig? Can Benji and Adapting get on top of him without significant peel coming his way? Not a single shell on Ghost Gaming's side. It's Blink Beads for 3 members, Beads Aegis for Panda Cat, and a Thorns pickup by PBM. So once Twig gets low, he's holding that. He's not getting a whole big shield in order to stop it. He's got to rely purely on the lifesteal, but there's Brawler's Beat Stick, Divine Ruin, plenty of anti-heal to try and help out and knock down that Anubis lifesteal to a manageable point.
The upgraded Sunder from Aurora 2, we saw it earlier, trying to be used on Mike. As Mike does get grabbed back in and hit by the Solar Flare, and Mike gets picked early. Great work from Radiance to find that pick. Now, Twig is the one that's in some trouble, looking for the lifesteal to keep him alive as the snipes come through, and Adapting gets one more. A collapse happening now here from Ghost Gaming. Spino K isolated on the front of the fight. Yes, he gets the stun, but the root is there, and Cyclone Spin gets another. Just like that, Radiance are right back in it, and Ghost are starting to struggle in these late game team fights.
That fight was just so strange from Ghost. I mean, Radiance is obviously chomping at the bit and getting ready to execute their 5-on-5. And even though I'm saying we don't know what Ghost is going to do in the 5-on-5, Radiance is very clear what they're planning on doing. They're going to Sunder Mike, just like they did in mid, and they're going to try and insta-kill him. And that's exactly what they pull off. So where are Sam and Fino-K trying to help him out? It can't be the backliners in that position. It has to be your backline dive effectively pulling damage away from your support in a Sunder composition. And Fine and Sam just were unable to do that in that fight.
Now Benji, recognizing that they've got the momentum, gets aggressive, forces Panda Cat out. Still 3 tier 2 towers on the map, and once Radiance clean those up, we're back to even. Man, this is back to an even game here at the 26.5-minute mark, and now instead of being ahead in a game with Anubis and Hercules and Awelish, now you're coming into an even game, and they've got Persephone and Kepri and Rom and Amaterasu on the other side. This is starting to get a bit scary if you're Ghost Gaming, as Radiance get another Primal. Talk about how easy it's going to be for them to do Fire Giants the next time it comes up and around. Radiance are starting to be in a great spot all of a sudden.
Man, just imagine how Radiance must have felt 10 minutes ago compared to how they feel now. You know, they went from getting absolutely crushed in this game, having no shot at all, I'm sure they felt like, and coming back. Well, I'm sure a lot of people felt like it. I know one person on that team who felt like they could still win, and that was Aurora, because Aurora is the #1 F7 master I've ever seen in my entire life. No one has ever wanted to F6 less than Aurora in any game ever. And I bet you this one's included. I know that he was probably being a pretty positive force in those comms, and I think it's been a big reason why they've been able to turn it around. Radiance is just grouping up and imposing their will. Ghost is still looking a little bit scattered after that little bit of a misstep around the initial Fire Giant.
Looks like Sam thought better of the back. He'll keep pushing over there in right and forcing a response. There is a back coming out. It'll be adapting that they send. So Sam should be able to get that information here shortly. No, he's rotating on out. All of Radiance are backing. They still got 2 minutes left on Fire. They already got 2 tier 2s, the mid and duo tier 2 are both down. So they'll just make sure Adapt doesn't get anything cheeky, or rather Sam doesn't get anything cheeky over there on that right side Phoenix, and they can still just push right down that Phoenix and threaten the remaining tier 2. I kind of like this call from Radiance. They get the reset, and they're in the right lane.
They're in a good spot, but they didn't do a good job of pushing up that left-hand lane. That's going to threaten their Phoenix pretty quickly. It shouldn't get the Phoenix without an Oni buff or anything like that, but it means that it's a lot more difficult for Radiance to transition a team fight win into more Phoenixes if they don't have their wave pushing in their favor on this left-hand side. So that forces Adapting to go back. He only pushes 1, which really isn't going to do that much. It's going to still push in Ghost's favor if I'm correct. And then at that point, you're still kind of at the exact same point. You only have this right side Phoenix as a viable strategy if you're able to get a big team fight.
Well, Adapting is still back there waiting on the speed, so that makes me think Radiance are just about done with this push. They head back towards Pyromancer and grab that. And as the math told us, Radiance are now tied up in gold, if not slightly in the lead. And now you're at a point here with Ghost where you gotta hope Twig was planning on having a late game even fight with this Anubis instead of just trying to get ahead early with it, because that is exactly where they are. He's got the Magus, Typhons, Bancrofts, and Obshard now, so plenty of percent pen and plenty of pen in general to shred through some of these builds with. But once he gets sat on, once Cyclone spins in the air and he's rooted himself, Twig has, with that first and fourth ability, that is easy for Radiance to try and clean him up.
I feel like Twig is going to try and sell the binding for defense, if I had to make a guess. I mean, Twig just always a fan of some more hybrid builds, a dual player who, you know, loves to try and counter build the enemy team. I think he's definitely still missing a Soul Reaver. I just feel like having a mage build without Soul Reaver is sacrilegious. It's just wrong if you don't have it in the build. But in this situation, it might be correct. I mean, you've got a lot of damage if you're Twig. You don't necessarily need Soul Reaver as good as it would be for you. Maybe defense is the right call for that 6th item.
We'll get our chance to see what Twig is thinking about in just a moment. Remember, Radiant have 2 primals on their side for this next fire, so they'll be able to burn it very, very quickly as Ghost, recognizing that Radiant are pushing up into their jungle, just seeing if there's anyone out there all alone. Some poke comes through, but Ghosts aren't going to bite on this. They'll stay safe and let Radiance fall back towards the fire to a more normal position. Now, this will be the enhanced fire as well. We're 31 minutes into a contest that looked over at 20 minutes. And all of a sudden, Ghosts have a ton of work to do in their own direction. They are going to step forward and try and defend this fire, but it's going to be a regular old fight. Sam took a ton of damage in mid, and 2 ultimates are used to try and secure the kill onto him. Cyclone Spin nearly gets it. Tings' ultimate is down as well, as Fine-OK has now been abducted. Benji started to get aggressive as well, as Cyclone Spin's damage is saying hello to Fine-OK's build, and Radiance can head right back towards 5.
Interesting that Fine isn't going to go into back here. Sam being low and forced back is a big deal, but it's a bigger deal that both backline ultimates are now down for Radiance.
Aurora not able to find the abduct, so Mike gets the push. Aurora in trouble of being executed. Has to use the Scarab's Blessing on himself. You never like to have to do that as Benji tries to lock down Fine-OK, who's still in there contesting the fire. Ghost actually did it. Sam takes care of Ting. Cyclone Spin is in trouble as well, has used the relics well in order to retreat and still is getting some help from Tings, who is in the afterlife helping, but Sam gets the double, hunts down, adapting to the right side of the fight, and somehow Ghost have found a way to right the ship and can start surging forward on their own.
PBM looking for the Earthbreaker, but can't quite find it. Still gonna set up for FineOK, who's flick forward, double stun out of the Achilles.
They're looking for a bit more. Benji ends up falling, and Ghost Gaming, it feels like it's happening 10 minutes late, but they get the 3 for 0 and the Fire Giant, have a minion wave in close, and can start threatening this right side Phoenix. It might even be more than just the right side Phoenix. Cyclone Spin and Aurora have their work cut out for them defending from this position, but Ghosts are now starting to hedge their bets a little bit more towards the actual Titan. They want to take this game if they can. They won't have any minions here to help, but they're just going to barrel their way right on in. They've got plenty of damage. The Titan can't handle it, and Ghost Gaming secure the win after all.
Okay, every Ghost Gaming fan gets to take a deep breath, relax a little bit. Look, you knew your team loved to troll. I mean, you've got Mike and Sam and Fine and Max. Everyone on this team is a troll. But that one was a little bit too close to the edge, I think, for a lot of Ghost Gaming fans. I thought FineOK was dead silent in the vast majority of this game. We really did not get a chance to call his name very much, but he's the one who stole the Fire Giant with an Achilles auto attack. So I guess it works out in the end for young FineOK over there in the solo lane, and Ghost get a win probably about 10 minutes later than they really should have.
But it ends up happening kind of the way that we thought. A big Fire Giant fight that handily goes their favor. They just walk it down. Just happens too late there for Ghosts get the win, breathe a sigh of relief, and have to regroup getting ready for game number 2. That'll be right on the other side of this quick break.
Well, it's a Ghost Gaming win at the end of the day. I say that because it should have been a win in about 10 minutes earlier there, I think, Gormizer. I think this is one of those, if you're Radiance, you know, maybe a small win that you were able to kind of get back into this game after a horrible start, make things interesting, but Ghost ultimately around the FG take the win.
Yeah, I think they, you know, again, you see one really big steal from Benji and then one, credited there to FineOK. I think both teams maybe dancing around that Fire Giant a little too lackluster. I mean, the first time we watched it and Ghost Gaming didn't get their Fire Giant, we were just like, man, if Twig was there 2 seconds earlier, that doesn't happen.
Right.
If someone else is there, PBM hits that push onto Benji, it doesn't happen. There's so many scenarios where you don't see Radiance prolong this, but he, honestly, MVP for Radiance, I have to give to Benji, because otherwise that game does end 10 minutes earlier, heavily in favor of Ghost Gaming. Right. And Dave, this is the day we live in. There's so much to talk about. Sam had a great slash line, but let's face it, the headliner, Anubis, has a 100% win rate in the SPL, baby. Let's go. It's 2020. That's the most 2020 energy that you could have.
How many games has he played now up to this? Is it a one for one? Yeah. No, because FinoK I think played him out of solo a couple of times. But yeah, Twig doing this, 3 minutes 45 seconds into the game, brings Blink into the mid lane. Didn't have to use it. Well, did use it rather a little bit later on. Didn't have to use it right away to set up for the kill. But I don't know, man. A 1.25 KDA isn't, stars on the night sky, anything dramatic like that. But Anubis in the mid lane worked.
Hey, and if it works, it works. I think starting off with what I would call, I don't know if I want to call it BM, although it definitely reads a little bit that way. I think it had a really good first blood to start opening things up. Of course, traded his life out for it. But then the other thing that we were highlighting throughout all of this, before that Anubis was locked in, I was talking about this duo lane and how there should be a lot of pressure. And there was a period of time where Cyclone Spin couldn't play the game. He just was not allowed to be existent in this. He was 3 to 4 levels down. He wasn't getting any kills. If he stepped out of his tower line, he was dead either to Panda Cat in a 1v1 or Sam would be over there to really ensure things went their way. And so I think we got to see this Wheelix really have just a heyday all around to make sure that things continued going its way. And I think that is exactly what you want to see out of Sam, is to make sure that things keep going like that, because on the other side, we were talking about it going into it, but we didn't really get to see much out of adapting. It wasn't really a bad game. It just didn't have the same great game Sam did.
Yeah, Sam, massive for Ghost here in game number 1, set up a lot of what Ghosts were able to roll with moving forward. And it's such an interesting thread to follow. I think Twig, you can draw some God Pool comparisons to Paul, the Hebo, getting banned out pretty heavily. They both kind of like those unconventional picks, and both can make them look good. I think credit, though, to Cyclone Spin on Radiance. The damage numbers didn't really lie there towards the end, towards the top of the game, despite being heavily slowed down early. So this is one of those. I really do think, nobody's going to say, oh, well, we lost, but at least we looked good losing. Obviously, Radiance will be bummed, but at least they turned around a very rough early game to make things interesting. Picks and bans for game number 2. See how things shake out here. It was the Hebo Olarun ban from Radiance, but that was when they were second pick. So I wonder if things change here now that they flip sides.
Well, that Persephone was something they locked in, and again, it's their most banned god here in Phase 2, so I'm wondering if maybe she's going to come back to that list or not. It does depend. Right. Both of these teams, we just saw it last game, Ghost are more than happy to pick Cupid over Rom. And Radiance has done that a lot in the past as well, so I'm wondering where he's going to go. Hebo seems like a good ban. Hercules at this point would be very solid. And there was one play, I actually got to, I'd love to highlight it just because of what it was. We didn't get to see a ton out of Khepri that maybe was game-changing, although the fact that Rez was able to come into the game and kind of showcase why he was big, I think earlier this phase and in Phase 1, where you just get that 6th life, essentially, for your team, 6th person, to be able to be in that fight. Aurora at one point ulted himself, ran to where he knew the Fire Giant would be dealing damage to make sure it procced over, and he came back at half health. They ended up losing the fight anyway, but it's little things like that I love to see from a support, and I'm wondering if they're, if you're willing to run it once, there's no real reason to shy away from a Khepri unless they get too execute heavy on the side of Ghost, and Sam has already showed that he likes to play Thanatos in the past. We've seen the Achilles just now, so it is one of those picks that, as much as I love it, it's always teetering on the edge.
And at this point, Sam ran wild on a Wheelix in game 1. If Radiance are going to leave it open, maybe it's something you consider down the road in picks and bans here for game number 2 again. I don't know why you wouldn't, after Sam has obviously shown that he can play it towards the highest level. Hercules finally into the ban column in a game that contains both Aurora and PBM. Yamoja there as well, and Ghosts are going to make really the first big pivot, and that is taking the Amaterasu, away from Benji. Persephone's still available, but so is Cupid. That's what Radiance think is the most important to grab here. That's what Ghost thought in game 1. Let's get Cyclone Spin on something that can maybe make an impact a little earlier.
I'd be a little surprised if Ghost didn't pick Persephone here, and that's just because you know if they let it through, Tings is going to grab it again, right? And so at this point, it almost feels like you need to scoop it up. But we live in a world.
No, it's Ymir.
I'm not. I can't even be upset. My first diamond that I ever got is getting first banned in games. The second diamond I ever got's getting first picked here by Ghost, banned in some games as well. It's a good year for me specifically in terms of what I get to see played, and I'm really happy. I think this duo lane as a whole, Ymir. Look, guys. Freeze, it's really great. His passive is phenomenal. Slows on literally everything he hits you. You're slowed. His carpet, it slows you. His freeze, you're slowed after the fact. That frostbite is good. And the carpet does a lot of damage. His ult, especially now that they've adjusted it so that when he dies, it detonates, is really solid. But let's be honest, the best thing in Ymir's kit, and it has been since day one, and I'm talking me, SMITE fans, sitting in, at my parents' home while I'm still in college, watching Hello Kelly Link stream on the SMITE game channel to learn Ymir, it's the walls, man. If you get really good at those walls, it changes the game. It changes the jungle, it cuts people off, and I'm looking at 3 people who have a dash. I can't remember if Persephone is able to go over the wall or not, but Khepri can't, Cupid can't. They're locking him down, at least in that aspect, in the middle of a team fight, and that's what I like here for Ghosts.
Agreed. And when we had the interview with Inbound yesterday, he kind of sung the praises of Ymir, and players with that high mechanical potential can just make some of those game-changing, game-saving, game-winning plays with the God. PBM has shown us that he's one of those guys who can play this Ymir towards its highest potential. So I think strong pick for Ghost, though the win rate might not yet reflect what Ymir is capable of. It is the Awilix yet again here for Sam, and it is another Persephone and Khepri over to Radiance. I'm surprised, though, at this point, I guess Radiance do have the ability, and Big Man Tings does like some of these ability-based hunters in mid, so I guess a flex pick enough with that Cupid, though Olorun and Freya are banned out. Could have been, Ra maybe a little bit further down, something like that from Ghost, but Gore, both teams with both of their first 2 picks want to get those long lanes locked in.
Yeah, and honestly, it kind of makes sense. I mean, you go back to last game, you won Cyclone Spin on something comfortable. That ROM game, I mean, at least for the last few minutes, he was able to be impactful. But earlier than that, man, he did not have anything going over there. I think Rom, Ymir, Awilix maybe isn't as aggressive as they were with a Hercules Cupid Awilix, but it's still up on that list, right? So I'm very excited to see how they're going to kind of change that. I do still think they have at least some early game advantage, although we saw last time that ended up costing PBM a little bit of his health bar early on. They still have that pressure. But I think we'll still see Sam come over here, still pretty much help shut down this Cupid. It just might not be to the same extent.
Now we're going to have to see something a little different from adapting as far as what we love to see him on, and that is the Thor and the Robin. You like the Anubis snap ban there, so no run back now for Captain Twig out of the mid lane. It'll have to be different for Twig as well. I do like the mindset, though, from Ghost and the Thor and the Robin bans, just because we know what adapting is able to do there, so make adapting play something a little less conventional outside of his god pool.
Man, we've seen more Anubis bans this week than I ever thought we would see in the year. So I'm kind of floored with it. But hey, again, the numbers don't lie. He's got a 100% win rate off of that one game. So maybe he is frightening. And honestly, the way Twig played him, it's almost more frightening when you can tell someone is going into a game with reckless abandon. Twig did not care about his life that game. I don't think there's any other way to word it. You don't blink into a tier 1 tower a few minutes into the game unless you just do not care anymore, and I think that gets a little scarier. You can't predict him at that point, so I do like that ban. But I like this Bakasura. We always talk about Nemesis as someone who can burn down Cthulhu really fast, still available, even though no one's going to pick her up. But I like Bakasura here. True damage is going to burn through him just as fast.
Now, Bakasura we have seen once here in Phase 2 of the SPL, and it has won once here in Phase 2 of the SPL. Do you like, ultimately, Gore, you sung its praises for burning down this Cthulhu. Do you think it's something adapting and his playstyle will mesh well with here for Game 2?
Man, I hope so, right? It's one of those things. Right. I think everything that Radiance have can mesh together, but at the same time, I think this feels very hyper-carry-esque, right? If I'm looking at Ghost, I see 1, 2, 2 carries, maybe 3, depending on how much damage this Cthulhu can do. But you're looking at Sam once again. You're looking over there towards Panda Cat. When I look at Radiance, Cupid can do a little bit, but everybody else is kind of siphoning everything into this Bakasura. If he doesn't do well, then I think it's going to start to fall apart. So Adapting maybe has more pressure on his shoulders now. Persephone, she can do a lot on her own. Cupid can do a lot on their own, but I don't think either of them are going to be the namesake carries. It has to be Adapting here, and so everybody has to play what they need for it.
It's the Nuwa for Captain Twig out of the mid lane, a pick that we've seen a handful of times here in Phase 2. Again, some okay games out of the Nuwa. We know what she can do. She provides some lockdown, good damage. A little zone spotting, depending on how you want to use that ultimate as well. Do you like what Ghost have drafted here?
Yeah, I just think it's going to be more consistent. The Nuwa is a little shaky, but honestly, at this point, I trust Twig to play anything. I think it's the same thing for Fine OK, right? Just give them something they're going to be comfortable on and trust them to do their job. I think based on, like, just in role, Radiance have a better, god-to-god comparison, but I think that Ghost are playing something that's just more comfortable for them, and I think it's going to look better because of it.
Well, Radiance, they come close to the turnaround in Game 1. Now it's time to turn around the entire set. Let's kick off Game number 2.
See if Radiance can get off to a better start this time, as Ghost controlled most of Game 1, right up until that 23-minute mark or so when Radiance got back into it. But in this one, Captain Twig elects to pick up the Nuwa. I'm stalling for a minute, as it looks like you might have a 10-on-10 grouping, and we certainly will. Aurora ducks Polar Bear Mike in, and Mike Low already a leap from the Bakasura, but Mike does not fall, and now Adapting as the low HP member. Back in is Mike with the slow from that second ability. But it looks like no more will be coming from all this. A big grouped up team fight at the start of it before minions even spawn, but no one ends up dying.
Couple blinks expended by Ghost and a set of beads and a shell from Radiance. I think I favor Ghost coming out ahead of that just because the blinks on a shorter cooldown than the other 2 relics and a little bit less likely to end up saving your life. Could also mean that you don't get to set up for a kill, but at the end of the day, I think both teams probably okay with how that little skirmish went. Can I just say how excited I am for what Twig has been doing in the mid lane? I mean, not only did we get the Anubis last game, though I was a little bit disappointed that he used one of Anubis' worst skins in his SPL debut here in Phase 2. That upset me a little bit. But he's going to the Nuwa now, which I have been ranting from the rooftops is super underrated. This god does so much damage right now. The changes to her minion AI make it feel unmissable at times, and it just does so much damage. It feels impossible to get away from. She still has a great ultimate. She still clears okay, not exactly the best mid lane pressure in the whole world, but with heavy CC compositions, she can really be fantastic. I love this pick here for Twig. I love it against the Baka because of all the time you buy with Fire Shards. I think it's a perfect pick here for Ghost.
Ghost able to strip away the red buff, giving that over to PBM with Sam already holding the speed, and with Big Man Tings being behind on wave clear, couldn't be there to help. Even Aurora was stuck in duo. But I know you're excited about this new wall for the damage, but how do you think she's going to match up with this Bakasura? I mean, I feel like he only has that small window of CC immunity on the back of him dropping the ultimate, and then Clay Soldier should buy her all the time that she needs.
Agreed. I do think it's one of her better matchups because so many gods just die to regurgitate. You can't get away from it because of the slow and the cripple, and you just feel like you don't have as much damage as Bakasura does in order to outtrade him during that time. Fire Shards takes you into the sky for a long period of regurgitate. I mean, it is not that long of cone auto attack buff, so you can take yourself out of it for that period of time. Your Clay Soldiers, if you place them right away, and Baka just continues to chew and you maybe pre-beads the stun, then he will kill those Clay Soldiers and kill you fast enough that you can't really minion stun him as long as he has beads up, but that's just when you use your ultimate. You just got to save your ult for the Baka ult. At that point, a lot of times he completely loses his kill potential.
Should be a decent matchup in terms of mid surviving the jungle ganks, at least for Twig, as opposed to adapting. But Sam, once again, going to reprise this Awilish pick. He had an excellent game in Game 1. Even when Ghost kind of struggled a little bit in the mid game, kind of had some fun, maybe let off the gas. Sam never really did. He remained undying, was able to find some kills, and really showed up for them in that small 1v1 he had up against Adapting, where he narrowly came out the victor and was able to go on to get the double. The Panda Cat getting aggressive. Cyclone Spin still has the dodge, or the dash rather, so no real trouble coming there.
Now it's Cyclone's turn to show what he can do in this exact same matchup. I don't know that he's going to get the same sort of preferred treatment that Panda Cat got in game one. Both Sam and Mike, really more Sam than Mike, I suppose, paid frequent visits over to the duo lane, and that's what allowed Panda Cat to get so far ahead. I think that if I'm Sam, I'm just going back there because Cyclone isn't exactly that much more survivable on the Cupid than he was on the ROM. That Fields of Love will be annoying for Sam to deal with, but all he really needs to do is put Cyclone down to about half HP, and Panda Cat should be able to do the rest.
Early grasp of death there from Tings might have saved his life. He does have to use the beads, fire shards, no way it'll be enough from here. So Twig tries to run back towards his teammates, not enough. As Adapting gets first blood, FinalK gets the return kill, at least, to make it a 1-for-1 with an early rotation over to mid, and boy did they need him. But the knockup was huge! Sam for Sucker had the pull, and Polar Bear Mike gets the second. It ends up being a 2-for-1 in favor of Ghost.
I feel like it's so easy to forget how nuts this combo is. I mean, Cthulhu, you think, okay, you know, knock-up setup, he's got his 3 in base form, but that's a really small one. You're not going to be pulling off that very often. Oh yeah, what about the gigantic, nearly unmissable, really high knock-up that he has when he's using that ultimate? Doesn't get any easier than that for Sam for Soccer. And Aurora, look, he might have been caught a little bit unaware. I don't really know how he's supposed to be aware of that. I mean, you're just kind of dead to the Cthulhu knock-up from that position if you're standing that close to him. And for the record, he was not standing that close to him. That's just Cthulhu range.
FinalK showing this pick still has some range. This Cthulhu has struggled lately these last few weeks. Gore's been, letting us know with the stats that Cthulhu, despite all his picks and bans, has been struggling, but FinalK showing some value here for it in its synergy with this Wheelish pick, and certainly it's still got all the teamfight presence you could ask for, but I think adding in some additional depth to what he can do for your team is really going to help his win rate, and that's what they're doing here with this Wheelish pick, finding all kinds of synergies and counters. You know how much Bakasura relies on his leap. I think they're really showing what this Wheelish can do as well.
Love it, and we've been kind of asking for picks like this for a while. I mean, if Ghost is going to go with a mostly early game, it's not like they can only win in the early game, but a pretty early game leaning team, why not pick junglers who can snowball early game leads really effectively? No one else is playing Thanatos except for Sam, for good reason. Why not give him something like the Wheelish as well that can do largely the same thing? I think it's a very intelligent pick for Ghost's playstyle, and Sam has really executed on it perfectly.
And what hasn't Sam executed on perfect? This guy's looking like the best we have throughout this season is Benji. Could be in some trouble. Still gets knocked up and pulled. What? Sam for Sucker is the GOAT. Benji, where are you going to go from here? As FinalK and Sam should have him pincered in. Makes it back towards the tier 1. The blink is there and the ultimate. And Benji, when Sam's hitting shots like that, I guess you just got to hand it to him and sit in grayscale for a bit.
Okay, man. You cannot just be doing that to a fellow SPL player. Okay, here's the deal. I do think Sam was trying to read the blink because he missed the melee range 3. I think he was predicting the blink, but Benji's blink timing was very different than what he thought. I think it really surprised Sam that he got Benji at the very end of that. I'm going to give Sam more credit than maybe he deserves. I think he was trying to read the blink path, but then didn't expect to hit it so late. It was the very last frame of that Moonlight Charge that knocked up the Wukong. That's illegal, man. You just can't be doing that to people. Like, Benji's got fans, bro. Like, what are they supposed to say to that? That's not nice.
And hey, some well-earned fans, I'd say too, but they're gonna have to hold that one, I suppose. It's Sam. Sometimes when you're hot, things just kind of fall your way, and I think Sam is proving that right now. Been playing really, really well, and sometimes things kind of go your way, so Ghosts now able to kind of stabilize. They ended up trading out First Blood for 2 kills in the middle lane, then got aggressive onto Benji over in solo. They really have not gotten that far away in terms of gold, only about 800 in their favor, but it kind of feels like momentum is starting to swing their way here a little bit as they're continually starting fights around Sam. And when Adapting plays the Bakasura, it usually is a bit slower to start. He likes to get involved a little bit later on once he's got some items, but they might need to call his number sooner just to make sure Sam doesn't get out of control.
It's going to be difficult, man. This Willix is just so good at finding picks and making things happen for herself without a whole lot of setup, let alone once she gets the setup.
Well, Amir doesn't live through these a whole lot. Adapting gets the kill as over the wall he comes in, drops the Regurgitate, and the Amir has a few options, tries to use the Shards of Ice to help. There's nothing there. So now with this big grouping, what will Radiance be considering doing? They're just going to come over, grab these Oracles, and leave. A much-needed pick, as Adapting does get involved in the middle lane.
Yeah, just Ymir. That's what happens to that guy.
Okay.
Nothing you could really do if you're going to play up that far. Mike should have given Radiance a little bit more respect than he did in that moment. As Panda Cat tries to snipe it away, and Aurora decides to hold the Scarab's Blessing for next life, I suppose. Maybe he was out of mana. I didn't see his mana pool whenever he died. That probably should not have happened, but I will say that Khepri does struggle with mana issues more than some Guardians.
Sam very nearly gets the better of big man Tings at the back end of Tings' own Tier 1 tower in response to that Gold Fury going down. I'm surprised Radiance didn't look for more of a reset once they realized Panda Cat was up in the ultimate, but kind of just raced him, came out the better, but it does end up costing them Aurora's life. Really not much Ghost can do in response. They came and grabbed some of the jungle away from Radiance on the backside of it and looked for that kill into Tings and got the beads out. Just wasn't quite enough to completely lock him down. So some good answers back from Radiance. They're looking much better here at the start of Game 2 than they did in Game 1. Now even looking for a buff invade of their own, but they'll find the bad news, red, already secured by Ghost.
And look at what Twig has in his build. He's already gone straight for the Rod of Tahuti. I love this rush on someone like Nuwa, who just really, it's kind of like Zeus. There's no moment where you go, man, I'm really glad I didn't have Rod in that moment. It's just so potent.
Well, Aurora starts this fight off. Grasp of Death is there from Tings as well. Cyclone Sped even drops the Fields of Love, and that's going to kill an Amir every single time. This has now happened twice to Mike, where they've all in committed onto him as Twig and Panda Cat were considering trying to go back in, not going to be able to find anything. Mike's had to be careful. I mean, I don't know if you can call it an overcommit. He's by his own red buff that time, but clearly Radiance are willing to pull the trigger.
Just a really good ultimate by Big Man Tings, and then good setup by Aurora after the fact. Mike uses the wall. They know that that's the big deterrent to this Grasp of Death. It's a big reason why I think Ymir is a pretty solid god up against Persephone. Even though she can flourish up and over the Ymir walls, it's still just really annoying to have to deal with something like a Ymir wall when firing off that ultimate, especially from max distance, where a lot of times you're not aiming to hit the person, you're just aiming at the wall next to them. Ymir gets a lot of time to react and can really throw a wrench in that engagement for your squad. So as soon as Mike put that wall up and was on cooldown initially, pretty easy ult for Tiggs to find, and it was a good shot from him for sure.
Tings has been a big part of Radiance's success when they're succeeding. I don't think he gets quite enough credit on a roster with this much talent on it, but here when they're struggling, he goes the way the team goes and is able to find a nice shot for them there. But it has largely been difficult. He has been bouncing around from pick to pick to pick these last couple of weeks, not quite finding his home the way some of these other mid laners have, as Radiance can't get much of anything to work. But if teams are going to let Persephone through, Tings is like, I can play that, guys, so I'm happy to take it, and shows it to them there with that nice ultimate.
I mean, he was top player damage last game. That's kind of what you were expecting out of your Persephone, but he did his job in game number 1. So I don't think you could ask much more than that from him. I agree, though. I think Radiance, one of their big problems has been in the drafting phase, not really knowing what they should be valuing for themselves. You know, I'm sure they know which gods are good for a lot of different teams, but Radiance is a team that's going to play their style, whether or not other teams are. And that, I think, has led to a little bit of a struggle for them on what they should be picking. I think Adapting has had a little bit of trouble finding his comfort gods again in the god pool. I mean, it's been a lot of Raven recently for him. That hasn't looked particularly inspired. Now we're going Camazotz into Bakasura. Two gods he's played a lot in the past, but not as much of recently. Camazott's game didn't really do it for me, but nothing was really working for Radiance until Ghost really opened the door for them. So we can maybe reserve judgment on that pick. We'll see how he does in the Baka. So far, he's doing great. He's second on net worth, 3-0. All 3 kills for Radiance on the hyper carry.
It's been a good start to this game for him, and he's going to have a great end. That does kind of bring us nicely into my next topic, which is how do you think these two teams will fare if it's even when this gets to the late game? As Twig is able to find a stud in mid, Grasp of Death comes out. You can kind of tell from the positioning that Radiance wanted this fight, but there wasn't any follow-up. That's Tings' ultimate now on cooldown. Maybe a little bit of breathing room for Ghost with this Fury spawning in 15.
Very odd decision to fight there from Radiance. Maybe they were trying to get relics out from Ghost before this fight around the Oni Fury, but that doesn't seem really worth it.
Mike blinks in, but really doesn't find anything. Now he's stuck. Good ultimate, though, brings Adapting back, but Cyclone Spin gets the kill onto Mike. Scarab's Blessing deters any aggression onto Adapting, and now we're starting to see the team fight prowess of this Radiance draft, and that's what has me a little bit worried about the late game. I mean, they've got this Scarab's Blessing, the Field of Love, Bakasura, who's going to have all those items online. This is a scary comp to fight into around the 25-30 minute mark.
Yeah, but at the same time, they're doing the same thing to the Ymir over and over and over again, and that's true. Won't work forever. He's going to get tankier. He really could have lived a lot longer in that little skirmish if Panic had decided to use that upgraded shell on him, but decides to hold it, probably for the best, with how low Mike was right off the rip in that fight. But Radiance have got to show that they can do that to more than just the early game.
They now take the Oni Fury, so they'll have some waves spawning in to give them a little bit of extra pressure. Stronger than any normal average minion wave and can push on their own if they're left undealt with. You can see them spawning on the bottom of the map now, those white circles. So keep an eye on how Ghost chooses to deal with them. This early in the game, not a huge deal by any means, but something Ghost certainly have to at least make sure they're responding to, as Radiance now have a nice little 2 to 3k gold lead on their side, on top of the fact that they have seemed to bully Mike pretty effectively throughout this early game so far. Ghost gonna have to find a way to slow this down before eventually giving up all these kills on the Ymir is a problem, even though they'll be able to stop it later on.
Just feel like at this point Radiance have done all they can with the lead that they have, and that's the one of the worst feelings to be in. Like, we got this Oni Fury, let's use it in some way, but there's nothing for them to really do. They are strong enough that they could consider invading. They've got a pretty decent gold lead right now, about 2,500, but experience is not massively in their favor. They don't have any one lane super far behind. This XP differential is really spread out through the entire team right now, so what is Radiance meant to do with the fact that Ghost had to spread out to deal those Oni waves? Really a whole lot of nothing. I like this, though. I mean, they're keeping pace. As soon as they can try and go get something, they do right around this Pyromancer.
Adapted gets aggressive in mid, and Twig has to use the Fire Shard. That should help with the chase that's happening up near speed buff, as Adapting now being hunted out by Fine OK, but that didn't stop Benji from taking care of Twig the moment he landed. Big 5-on-5 grouping as the Abduct comes out. Fine OK stuck in the Fields of Love, but responds with the Descend into Madness, so they can keep right on fighting, trying to see if they can defend this Tier 1 tower, even without Captain Twig, as Radiant strip away the red buff here in left. They're not so sure where exactly they can go, but you can tell they're grouping up and looking for something, knowing that they've got the lead.
Radiance really just brute forces their way into that fight. They're just kind of forcing these engagements, and it's working out well for them. Twig, I thought, was a little bit slow on the Fire Shards, took a little bit too much damage, didn't realize that Benji was coming behind him. Knew he wasn't going to die to just Adapting, but Benji's the one who can make it happen, as he does again onto Sam for Soccer off of a very good flank coming from Cyclone, stunning Sam right off a minion.
Now where's Radiance go? I mean, we're 17.5 minutes in, they're in control, but they feel comfortable enough to try and do a Fire Giant. It looks like They do. They start it up. Now, this positioning feels more like doing the objective than a bait here, aggro. They want the Fire Giant around their waist. They have it well below half now, and in come Radiance. PBM, rather Ghost, are looking for some kind of stun, but Mike just gets bursted. They halt the DPS, but Fino-K now here, so they turn their attention to him. He falls as well. They can turn right back to the objective, grab it cleanly, and get the kill onto Twig. How about that? Almost textbook the way they handled that FG.
Exactly what Ghost should have done in game number 1. They wait until Ghost overcommit, and then they just stop hitting the objective and kill everyone who's in front of them. First it's Mike, then it's then it's Fine, then it's Twig. I just think that Ghost can afford to give up that fire and still be in an okay position. You've got Panda Cat pushing on the left-hand side. He's going to grab both dual lane towers. If they get fire, so be it. But you don't want to do that, which is just gift them 3 kills instantly.
Sam not going to have a way out of this one. He is too far in no man's land, and Benji will be the one that gets that kill. 3-1-2 on the Sun Wukong so far, and looking really good. 4-1-5 for adapting on the Bakasura in a great spot. He's got the kin size finish now on the back of the Hastened, so he's shredding anyone he comes into contact with. Karen's coin just finished for Tings. They're moving into some big power spike items now they can fight with, and it's combined with this Fire Giant, so they can start to look for a lot more pressure throughout the map.
This is a really good spot for Radiance to be in. My only concern is that I think they might have trouble sieging against this Ghost composition, which is pretty solid on the defense. Things like Nuwa Fog are really annoying to deal with because frontliners can sneak into it and get good engages onto your front line without you realizing, but it also basically clears the minion wave without putting Twig out of position at all. It allows him to play very far back. You factor in things like Ymir Wall, and this Fino-K Cthulhu ultimate, and the Mire from Cthulhu even before he uses that ult. I think it might be difficult for Radiance to get Phoenixes if they allow Ghost to set their feet on the defense.
It's a good thing Radiance are getting aggressive, because Ghost are not all here for the defense. I said they got aggressive, but they choose to give it up. They've gotten all the tower. They can afford to take some time to reset. It's a good thing Sam didn't fully channel that back, because now he can strip away some of the farm in the jungle and take blue buff and back harpies, while Radiance head over towards the primal fury to make any future Fire Giants easier for them. They'll take less damage and deal more damage when they come back towards it. So Sam able to find some much needed farm, but they're still significantly behind. But they might not have to defend a Phoenix Siege on this Fire Giant push with Ghost, or rather with Radiance falling back.
Doesn't seem like it. I mean, only 1 minute and 20 left on that Fire Giant buff for Radiance. Don't think that they can really set up for a Phoenix Siege in that amount of time. Maybe just keep these side lanes pushed as much as you can and set up for Pyromancer as soon as that spawns.
Radiance are all grouped up on this left side. They'll be pushing, it looks like, the left wave up, trying to get some value out of their remaining Fire Giant buff. And Sam says, hey, why don't you use me for value? They drop down the Regurgitate. That also cripples, so Sam just barely able to find a leap over the wall elsewhere. But look at Benji blinking around. Good freeze, though, from Mike. Allows Sam to reposition when he's low HP. So they get Sam out of there. He'll reset. And they'll be in position to defend on this left side Phoenix.
40 seconds, so basically 1 wave that Radiance have an opportunity to use the buff for, and they're down 3 ults. Ghost has all 5.
Not going to be an easy siege for them, but they're putting in some damage. Fire Shards comes out from Twigs early. Adapting is already in trouble, has to have the Scarab's Blessing placed on him as Benji gets aggressive into the backline. The snipes aren't enough from Panda Cat, but Fino-K gets involved. Takes care of Adapting early. They do end up losing that left side Phoenix, so this might end up being worth for Radiance. Panda Cat ends up getting the kill onto Benji, but a 2 for 0 on the defense. Not bad at all here from Ghost.
Surprised that Radiant somehow managed to sneak enough autos in to get that. Cyclone did it while holding on to both of his relics, which is hard to believe. Good space created by Benji and Adapting, and it ends up being a little bit too much space at the end, but if your goal is to get that Phoenix and get out as many members as you can, I think Radiant should be very happy with how they took that siege. They had 1 wave to get it done. They did it in that exact amount of time. They did it down 3 ultimates against a composition that I think is pretty hard to siege against for Ghost. That's a good play by Radiance. It's a matter of if they can now break the sort of shell that Ghost is going to be able to set up around this Fire Giant by the time it spawns.
Mike looking for a freeze, not able to find it there, but they should be in position to defend this next Fire Giant. In fact, they'll take the Pyromancer first. Take a look at this next item that's coming in this build here for adapting the Icovile on the back of that kin size. Tons of attack speed, and he'll have the increased power coming his way too. Once he's looking to start dueling, I don't know if anyone's going to be able to stand toe-to-toe with him.
Love this item for Bakasura because these items that he builds, the Hasten Katana, the Golden Blade, they're good utility items, but they don't exactly bring a lot of power to the build, and Baka doesn't need that much power. He's really more predicated on attack speed because of his true damage on the 3 being duration-based. So you just want to max out as many attacks as you can when you're getting the true damage. But getting a high-power item does feel really good. You can cut that time to kill down by a second or two. That's a big deal for someone like an assassin. And Icovile does that perfectly. It still gives him the attack speed that he wants in order to maximize Butcher Blade's value, but it's one of the higher power items that he can buy and really make use of.
That's right, it will eventually increase that physical power by 45. That's about all the stats in the fire. Very, very low. Snipes are coming through from Panda Cat to make this one close, but Radiance secure the objective, and Fine-OK is low in the middle of everybody. He's able to retreat and keep his life for now, but I think Radiance is just happy to make it out of there with all 5 members intact plus FG. They'll get a chance to go Siege in mid and right a little bit later on, especially with that left side Phoenix already down and Ghost having to worry about those fire minions. But they were playing with fire with that one, a very, very close FG.
Close FG, but well secured by Benji. Just feel like that defense from Ghost got changed drastically by something that we saw before the Pyromancer even spawned. Remember when Mike tried to blink freeze Aurora and Aurora was able to dash away in time? Without that blink, Mike's ability to get into that pit safely was much, much more difficult. And he really wasn't able to get into that pit and disrupt the DPS from Radiance whatsoever. They were really relying on Fine-OK and on Panda Cat to do the job. Mike didn't really get a chance to get involved in that fight. I wonder how much different that fight looks if Mike does have that blink available and is able to get on top of the carries a little bit more easily. I don't think it necessarily guaranteed goes Ghost's way, but I just think that it would have cost Radiance's backline relics. Maybe Ghost gets wiped for Michael all in committing, and this is the better situation for the Chaos side. But I think that without that blink, Mike's engage potential really just went out the window.
Radiance grouped up now with Fire Giant around all their ways. They'll even have Sunder back in 10 seconds, which means they'll be full stacked for this siege. Ghost on the other side do have all their ultimates and all their relics as well, so it should be a nice even battle, at least in that regard. Still 10k in favor of Radiance. Adapting in the 4-1 split is the one threatening left side Phoenix. Twig comes over with Sam to help defend, so it's the 4v3 in mid. Radiance got to feel good about their chances. Aurora moves in first. The wall from Mike denies any damage, and Radiance have to reset.
This is what becomes difficult against Siege against this comp. This Ymir wall just denies you for a long enough period of time, and Twig can kind of float between lanes pretty easily.
He's done a good job of that so far. Now it's just Twig left defending up against the Baka. Someone needs to come over and help as the mid Phoenix got shredded. Fine-OK in trouble too as the Abduct landed on him already. Adapting now in the 2v1. Fire shards and the damage from Sam will prove to be too much. Good wall from Mike. Locks in Benji, and Aurora forces Benji into the ultimate. He goes into the backline trying to get rid of Twig, but the backup is there. Perfect scare. Flexing for Aurora. Comes in the last second, and Tings is able to get the kill onto Mike in trade. So it's 1-for-1 so far, but Ghost lost their mid Phoenix as Radiance got what they came for.
Man, what a res from Aurora. That would have been very difficult for Radiance to stick around this left-hand side without having Benji here at a front line. Now, no TP for Benji, but he does have Soul Eater, Fire Giant buff still for about a minute. He's got enough regen that he can front line effectively enough for Radiance, plus Aurora still has a shell.
Radiance start moving in on the left Phoenix, which is already low. Aurora takes quite a bit of damage, but Panda Cat has the heart bomb on him. barely able to live through it. Got some extra help from the shield that was on him. Now Radiant have enough people into the left side. Phoenix, they can burn it down alongside Fine OK, but Sam's in the back line getting one kill and perhaps looking to try and find another, but too much damage from Tings on the Persephone. That's left and mid Phoenix down. Ghost lost Fine OK and Sam as Radiance are on the disengage.
Ghost just is really having trouble finding when they want to go in as a unit, and that is not a usual problem for Ghost. I don't know if it's because Mike is playing this Ymir that has some more difficult engage potential without having Blink available, but mid Phoenix, they didn't really answer the call to Radiance. I mean, as soon as that wall went down, Radiance just kind of walked in and started dealing damage as Fine OK had started rotating left for some reason that I just don't think that was really needed.
Poor Twig in some trouble. Fire Shards buys him some time, but Adapting knows exactly where he is, sticks to him perfectly, and I think that might have been closer than it looked like. Tig is about to get some return damage off with that Shining Metal plus those Clay Soldiers, so Adapting had to stick to him in that cloud, as he did.
That's the difficult part of Nuwa versus Baka. In the early game, Adapting doesn't have that level of damage to stick to you for that amount of time and kill you past the Fire Shards. In the late game, it only takes him 7-8 autos to kill you, and he's hastened while he's hitting you, and there are 2.5 of them a second. Baka is just one of those characters that if he closes the gap onto you like that, you have lost already once he's at this point in the build. It's just difficult for Adapting to do it when there's multiple members around. We saw how much he struggled to stay alive and be effective on that left side Phoenix where he got handled pretty well by Ghost in that dive.
Mike, stuck in the fields of love, is able to walk out of it with help from the Thorns, but he's low. Adapting snuck up onto Sam. He'd been stalking him for a minute and finally sprung the trap close. Now he leaps onto Mike. Cyclone Spin gets the kill, and Radiance looking like they're back in form here in game number 2 of 15,000 gold over Ghost. With 2 members down, they might even just be able to push this through. Twig and Panda Cat are going to pose a problem, but Radiance have every advantage.
Just Fine OK needs to have a really, really strong ultimate here in order to create the zone. Not a lot of ultimates here for Radiance. Only their front line has them. It's going to be up to Fine.
Fine does move to the back line as expected. Drops the ultimate, and Aurora the only one really looking at him. Benji keeping a couple of people busy elsewhere as the back line for Radiance have grouped up right in this mid-Phoenix range. Fine OK falls back to the Titan. Benji looking for a poke from range, but Radiance not really trying to all in. This mid-Phoenix will be back up soon. They're gonna full-on retreat, it looks like, and head back maybe towards Fire as Ghosts do enough to keep their base alive.
Really smart by Fine OK. Instead of letting Radiance come in to their Titan room and get the Titan low, they instead set up outside of the Phoenix. And Twig and Panda Cat don't get baited. If those two go too far forward and then end up dying, it doesn't matter what Fine OK is doing. Radiance can just rush the Titan. So those two stay back. Fine OK does enough in order to create space. It's basically 10 seconds where Radiance can't walk past him effectively. And then by that time, everyone's going to be up from Ghost. Both PBM and Sam are coming up off respawn. Smart call by Radiance. I like them going straight to Oni Fury as well. Don't think Ghost is going to feel comfortable enough to contest you by fire anyways. So you know that you've got time to wait around and get that Oni wave pushing on the left-hand side, an Oni fire wave, in fact, that someone really needs to make sure they're dealing with, and make sure that Ghost isn't the ones who can get that Oni Fury while you're doing fire and make their defense a little bit easier.
Ghost doing all that preparation so they can contest. Radiance are around the Fire Giant. Sam still pushing up minions and left, so at best, this is a 4v5 for Ghost, and that's if they even want to fight it. It looks like they're not going to make it there in time. Mike has been zoned out by that ranged root. Fire Giant low, and Ghost give it up. So Radiance get the objective. Ghosts do have all 3 Phoenixes up, as you already covered, though, so they do have a better defense than they have had these last few times, but those 2 Phoenixes are so weak. It won't take much time for Cyclone Spin or Adapting to burn those down, then Ghosts are right back in the same spot.
And with Benji's build, he's got a lot of power. He can honestly just blink into a Phoenix, like left Phoenix. Benji could blink in and kill it in a few autos. Remember, Enhanced Fire Giant, not only does it give you enhanced damage to structures like this, but it also removes their backdoor protections. Normally you need minions in order to do max damage to a Phoenix. With EFG, you do not, and that ends up being a big deal. It enables backdoors much more easily.
Mike, again, using that wall to deny any autos from hitting the Phoenix and bringing it down any lower. Radiance with another 4-1 split. Benji is on his own, threatening mid-Phoenix. Sam and Final K both show up, and Mike keeps this right side Phoenix healthy. Now Sam can lurk between the two Phoenixes, go where he's needed is fine. Keeps Benji busy in mid. Sam even considering pulling the trigger, gets the Mad Guys from Aurora, I believe. Yeah, he does have that bubble around him, so now it's popped, and he should be at least a little more vulnerable next time.
But right side Phoenix is half HP. This little bit of chip damage from Radiance has paid off. They had everyone a little bit lower. Twig's the only one showing noticeable signs of damage.
Grasp of Death ends up landing. Fields of Love comes out too, but Final K aggressing alongside Sam, and that forces Radiance to fall out of the Phoenix range. Enough damage on the Cyclone Spin to take care of him. The dive from Ghost is potent, and Radiance don't seem to have an answer to it. Benji going on a dive of his own takes care of Captain Twig, but that's a death sentence. Panda Cat comes back, cuts him down, and it's 2 for 1 in favor of Ghost. They keep all their Phoenixes standing, and okay, we're starting to see what Ghost can do on these defenses now. Aggro Radiance struggling to break the base.
That time, it's just a pretty simple setup for that team fight. It's 2-on-3 on both ends of the fight. It's the solo laner and the jungler for each team trying to kill the mid ADC and support on the other end. And because Ghost Gaming's Nuwa is so good at just spreading her damage throughout everybody. I mean, that Fire Shards hits not just the 2 people who are near you, but everyone on the map. It makes Ghost's dive a lot easier to execute on, and Ghost's execution on that dive was just better. Final K and Sam did a better job than what Benji and Adapting were able to do on their end. Aurora is forced to use his Scarab's Blessing on Adapting, and for good reason. I mean, he got reset off of it, so it was definitely worth his usage, but that made sure that the back line for Radiance wasn't going to be particularly safe. Big Man survives with both relics still up, so that is a good sign for Radiance, but that should pretty much quell the next Fire Giant push anyways. All the relics down on both sides will likely be up in time for the next fight anyways.
Ghost, though, showing that they can defend and get the added benefit of that Phoenix helping them out. I don't know if that's enough confidence for them to feel like taking a Fire Giant fight just yet, as Twig only just recently sold off that last relic for his Divine Ruin to go in that 6th slot. So they still haven't fully caught up with Radiance, who have some members who have sold off boots. Aussie coming in as that double ice deal. That feels so great in these Hunter builds when you're able to sell off these boots, and it can make you feel nigh unkillable at times when you're trading. So I like this look for Cyclone Spin, and Radiance certainly still have the edge.
As do I. I like the Aussie pickup quite a bit for him. A lot of times you're kind of left in these 1v1s where both you and the warrior are a little bit low, but you just don't have enough power to kill them before they can kill you. They kind of bring that inevitability to that 1v1. Aussie throws that math off pretty effectively. They just can't do enough or take enough damage to stop that lifesteal from coming through. Now, Fine also has Divine Ruin, so I don't think that Cyclone will be getting max effectiveness from this double lifesteal, but more effectiveness from double lifesteal than single lifesteal. And if he was close to being able to live through the dive before, even though the Aussie proc isn't exactly the most damage he could get or the most survivability, it could certainly be enough. I like the pick.
And it's still synergized with Silver Branch. If you're selling off the Ninja Tabi, you lose some of that attack speed, but Aussie can help out with some of that and some pen. Just not a bad last item there is Ghost. Are positioned around this Fire Giant. It looks like they are going to be here to defend. This is the first time they can defend in a while, with all 3 Phoenixes up and relatively healthy. Now, the waves are a bit pushed up, which might still cause them some pause. They're up beyond, you know, all those topside buffs, like the purple and blue, so it's a bit scary for them, but they certainly can be here to contest as Radiant start to close in that gap as well. They'll likely be the ones starting it up as Ghost have to answer.
Very similar to last game in the sense that Radiance does not have great secure. Persephone has very good secure if you can time it right, but it's difficult because you need to place all of your plants at tier 1. Okay, bear with me here. This is Persephone math, and this is always where it gets a little bit weird. So when you place a Persephone plant, and then you use your 3 standing on top of it to jump away from it, it will automatically upgrade it to the next tier of plant. So when it's sitting at tier 2, you jump away from it, it upgrades to tier 3. You do not want tier 3 plants when you're ready to secure, because the tier 3 plants prioritize gods. So if FineOK or PBM are in the middle of the fire giant pit with you, your 6 or 7 plants that you've set up to try and insta-kill the fire will only focus on the tanks that are in front of you. So you need to plant a bunch all at once and then blow them up, unless someone's not there to take that aggro from you. It's a little bit awkward, but if no one's around, her secure is great. If someone is around, it gets pretty bad pretty quick.
Tings has a lot to consider if he wants to make sure this fire can't be stolen away. Good wall there from Ghost. It means they don't have to worry about Aurora's aggression. Look at all these Mag-Eyes cloaks, though, for Radiance. Adapting has one, Benji and Aurora both have one, and that's going to make their initial CC so much worse. Aurora goes in with the Abduct. Fields of Love is there as Adapting drops Regurgitate in the middle lane. Aurora has to use that Scarab's Blessing on himself, and that's 4 ultimates down for Radiance, and Ghost hold on to all of theirs. I mean, some of them aren't quite as impactful as Radiance's, but still, that's not a bad little trade for them, though Ghost do use their Thorns and Shell.
Sunder used by Aurora as well, so Mike all of a sudden gets to feel like he can play the game. Again, remember when I said earlier, Radiance felt like they were brute forcing their way in? Ghost this time just give Radiance a little bit more leeway, a little bit more respect on the engage, and Radiance go all in. They hard commit yet again, and this time Ghost just kind of lets them rage their own way. You know, you kind of let the toddler tucker themselves out by letting them rage all they want. It's kind of what Radiance just had happen to them. Ghost lets them use everything. They're now ready to set up, but with all the CDR Tings has, his ultimate already back up. Adapting's is nearly ready as well.
Yeah, I mean, even Cyclone's been not too far, so yes, this is nice from Ghost, but they might have missed their window as Fine is already low. He tried to blink in, but got knocked up right away, and so he took a bunch of damage. But Sam for Soccer is a one-man army, gets to the backline and shreds Cyclone Spin before Fire Shards even gets there. Wall from Mike, and FineOK's presence should mean Sam can retreat, but Adapting continuing to surge forward, drops the Regurgitate to look for more damage, but gets pushed out. Ghost Gaming still standing tall, and Cyclone Spin another 50 seconds before we're gonna see him.
Just insta-killed on the back line. We didn't even get a chance to see his health bar go down because it basically went from 100 to 0, it looked like, on the screen. And Sam really has utilized the same strategy an awful lot. In the early to mid game, we're using things like the Cthulhu knock-up to set us up, and we're trying to pull our Bakasura opponent on Gravity Surge. Come late game, he's using it as a pre-stim. So you use your ultimate, then blink in. Your first auto is a hi-rez auto because you've stored that with your Gravity Surge. You've just got all this power and attack speed, and it just makes it impossible to survive your dive. He's using that ultimate completely differently come late game, and that's what you see the best of Willicks players do.
Mike able to find the freeze onto Aurora. Fire Giant had been started by Ghost. They like their odds in this fight. As Cyclone Spins respawned, but he's still not here. They got the fire down to half. Benji, though, is nearby and ready to steal. Aurora comes in as well. This is gonna be contested as the Fire Giant gets lower and lower, but Mike ends up falling to big man Tings. Goes to secure the objective, but Aurora gets the kill on the Tings as well. It's a 2 for 0 in favor of Radiance. Panda Cat ends up proccing the reset, and Cyclone Spin kills Sam. Ghost got the Fire Giant, but what did it cost? That's the Avengers meme, as it ends up costing everything. A full-on wipe for Radiance, and that's just the game.
Beautifully played by Radiance. Good patience and understanding that they don't have to get fire to win this game. They just have to win the fight. Afterwards, Ghost just coin flipping another objective. When you're not drafting good secure, as neither of these teams have, you can't bank the entire fight on getting the objective because it's going to take you too much damage to make it worth it. And that's exactly what happens to Ghost. They take way too much damage. They can't keep their backline safe and healthy. And then it's really just easy cleanup for Radiance on the back end.
An excellent last team fight there from Radiance, huh? I mean, just some great work they're able to do with denying some of the engage that's coming out from Ghost, and trying to prevent Benji and Aurora from being as disruptive as they had been up until that point, or Fine and Aurora rather from being as disruptive as they had been up until that point. An excellent game from them after bouncing back from a really tough Game 1 loss. Still, though, a lot gonna have to still be decided in this last game to come. Game number 3 in just a few minutes.
Radiance tie up the set and send us on to a game 3. And adapting, very important in this one and getting things rolling. The Bakasura worked for him, and hey, maybe it'll work for you in game, and you can look good while trying to be as good as adapting on this god. Code Eater Bakasura, it's our Prime Gaming kind of cameo with them. Exclamation point Prime in chat will give you all of the information there, or smitegame.com/prime-gaming. I think I got that all right. Code Eater Bakasura, our Prime Gaming duet there with them. Gormizer with me. That was my duet-ish thing here on the desk with me, Gore, and we're going to talk about what happens there in Game 2. This one goes even longer than Game number 1. Radiance, though, hold on here, and it looked like Ghost might be able to stand strong on the Phoenix line, but fall apart towards the end.
Yeah, I said a lot of good things about Ymir going into that game, and then we didn't get to really see any of them. So I'm just going to hold that L. It just didn't to come out. I think Mike has been one of the ones that has done a little more consistently. Him and Inbound, it's kind of weird. Not often do you get to group them together. Have been more consistent on this Ymir, but well, he's below 30% win rate for a reason, and so I'll hold that one where it is. On the other side, though, we got to see Adapting really step up here, and there were some good moments, I think, for Ghost Gaming throughout all of this. It's no need to say that it goes 41 minutes for a reason, but Radiance really did feel like they were in the driver's seat a majority of the game. Honestly, it felt much more like a return to form than what we've seen out of them as of late. And this Bakasura got off to an early start with an early kill between him and Big Man Tings. It was very difficult to just exist in the mid lane.
Right.
I think Aurora had his hand in there as well, just as the support always does. But, I mean, look at how many of these plays with Adapting start with Big Man Tings from, wherever, the opposite side of the field, throwing out his ult and locking people down with some sort of Hail Mary ultimate. And so being able to consistently have that amount of lockdown, then the just general damage output that Bakasura has, true damage at that, I think made it pretty easy for him to burn through anybody that stood in his way.
Worked fantastic for Adapting. 6, 2, and 8 is where he ends up on the Bakasura. Gore, that's a pick we've largely seen in the SCC. I believe it was now the second pick we've seen, at least here in Phase 2 of the SPL, of this Bakasura. So not as consistently picked as we see at the SEC level, but something that obviously can work in the right circumstances. Big Man Tings just pours out the damage this game on the Persephone. That's why I was a little bit surprised, Gore, that Ghost Gaming led it over to BMT, that you're kind of playing with fire the more often you give a team this pick.
And honestly, I think it's worth noting just because of how much damage Benji was able to do. Like 30,000, getting a solo laner up there in terms of damage maybe isn't the hardest thing, but 8,000 damage separating him and Cthulhu of all people. And you know, Mifflin and I were talking about it, and you were there as well while we were discussing it.
I existed there, right?
Cthulhu, yeah, you were like, you didn't have much to say about it. You were just kind of like, yeah, he's not been winning a lot, and we're like, you're right. And it's just because if Cthulhu's ult isn't up for a good team fight and he doesn't throw it out there, he's not doing a whole lot, man. Like, in just a regular life, especially against something like a Bakasura, normally the Nemesis, but he's just not able to get a ton done. And in that game, I think it showcases where his weaknesses really are, and that these pro players, the reason he's disappeared is because his win rates plummeted into that 30%. They figured out how to deal with him, and now he's just not the threat he once was.
Yeah, not first pick / first ban priority anymore, it seems. Picks and bans for game number 3 will join us here in just a moment, and I keep my eyes, I think, Gore, still on the jungle here. We now see an adapting play. Similar styles of picks in a couple of games here. The Kamazots, I think, had its merits where you jump on someone, try to blow them up. Obviously, Bakasura trying to do the same thing there as well. So my eyes still with adapting and what he might be feeling like playing here for game number 3, as well as that Persephone pick. Now Ghost back in that first pick spot, and remember, it's been that Cupid has been prioritized first and foremost, and back-to-back wins here in this set maybe explains why.
Honestly, yeah, he did incredibly well. I think last week he had 6 out of 7 wins, so if you're going to be able to do something like that, you're going to get picked up a lot more often. And granted, you know, if you look at his history, I think there's a lot of games, and it's primarily Obey while they were still trying to get their feet under themselves. When they'd pick Cupid, Cupid would do really well, but he wouldn't win the game. That was probably the key in, like, oh wait, Cupid might have something. Like, wow, he's going 10-2, guys, and still losing the game. That's maybe a key. And then you started seeing it crop up for a lot of these other teams. I wouldn't be surprised if, like you said, Ghost really want to scoop that up. So it's on Radiance to try and ban that away if they would like to. But Ghost do make, I think, 2 changes here already that I love. They get rid of the Khepri. We've seen how oppressive that ult can be, and if Sam and anybody on the side of Ghost isn't willing to just go execute heavy, and honestly, even your executes aren't going to come up enough, then you just ban it. Get it out of there. It's too much to be able to deal with. And they get rid of the Persephone because it's just been so strong, and if they're not going to pick it, Radiance, you know, they've already done it 2 games in a row, and it's been phenomenal for both of them, or at least phenomenal last game, great in game 1. So you have to be able to be willing to target those, and I think that's what Ghost is showing here.
So I think Radiance were in a bit of an awkward spot there where Olarun or the Cupid is maybe where they had to look for. So Olarun's still available. That's been a popular pick of Captain Twig. And remember, Radiance, a team that doesn't mind giving one of those magical hunters over to Cyclone Spin and then something more ability-based in the mid lane for Big Man Tings, won't be, at least not yet, a magical hunter for Ghost Gaming, as the Ram will pull the draw here for Ghost. Now, this would be interesting, Gore. We've started, like, you know, Ymir started to see this little rise. Ra has started to see this little rise here as well. And first overall for Radiance, they're putting some stock in some of the long-range damage.
I think all we can say is, you know, Cupid, the Ra, the Ymir, Obey are trendsetters at this point, right? Like, I mean, they were starting to pick up a lot of these before some of the others, and maybe showcasing what they could do. That's the only way I can look at it. At least I'll give them the credit for it as it is here. And I liked this because we got to see this Raw a couple of days ago. Again, didn't end up winning for Radiance as they're still searching for one bounce back so far since their return. And this Raw was a really good pickup for them. It's good healing, along with the Horus. Ooh. I'm already thinking of the sustain that's going to exist for Radiance throughout this one. It's going to be very difficult for the Ram and even this King Arthur, who's a lane bully, to maybe find themselves, well, just as far as ahead as you would want to. Maybe forcing Ghost into things like a Cursed Ankh for some fighting, or something maybe a little more bursty to make sure they stay locked down on the side of Radiance.
I wondered if we would see this, the Poseidon pick as well. You know, it's kind of been Olarun, Hebo, a little Poseidon here and there for Captain Twig. 33% win rate through 9 games played here in Phase 2 of the SPL. I would imagine a decent chunk of those have been Twig out of the mid here for Ghost. Gore, does Poseidon bring enough to the table where you're getting excited about this pick, or do you think that's purely just some comfort, some big burst damage for Captain Twig.
I'm excited about it, but I don't know if it's just because of the fact that it's nice to have that variety. I think there's a ton of mid laners that could be played right now, but realistically, you're going to end up seeing them fall, I want to say just a little short, right? When you have things like Merlin, the Raijin out there, the ones that dominate, things like Ra were easy to overlook, but then you start seeing Ra do well. Plus, he got some pretty great buffs earlier on. I think if you're looking at Ra, who's slow immune, who's able to zoom around using his passive as well, Poseidon keeps up with him on rotations. Poseidon has the same kind of burst potential that the ult has from Ra, and he has a little bit better team fight lockdown. It's weird to say it that way just because of the fact that I think Whirlpool for a team fight is going to be better than what you're going to see out of Ra. But Ra has healing, so at the same time, he's bringing something different to the table and a lot of good damage. So I like that they're bringing it in. I do think he's going to just slowly be on the rise, but we'll have to see if he can at least make that win rate climb with him.
Right. Sam, PBM still both need a pick here for Ghost Gaming. You look over towards Radiant score, and the Horus Uller is kind of what we saw for a while there in Phase 1, slowed down a little bit. Moving into Phase 2, that's just sort of the traditional kill lane, that CC setup, at least in lane, and then of course in the team fights later on it's going to be worthwhile. But if you're looking for a duo to start to apply some pressure to PBM and PandaCat, try to return the favor a little bit, Horus and Uller is a great place to start.
Yeah, again, I think this is going to be an incredibly dominant lane. Pele, I also think, shifts things into the early game. Although, looking back on this, it's like this weird flavor pick. Like, if you tell me Ra, I immediately think of Obey, just because of the fact that they've been running a lot and Wolfie likes it. The Horus feels very Sanguine-esque. Uller has fallen out of the meta, but is still very good. And honestly, I think he's right here on this list where it's like, cool, is Cupid gone? Is Rom gone? I need to go someone else that's physical. I'm going to go Uller. He's the next one on that list for me. And then Pele feels like a little bit of Renegade's flavor in there. It's like all things we've seen successful across several different players. And all of these, I think, are going to highlight different portions of the game for Radiance. I just hope they can make it mesh together. The Pele's the one I'm going to say keep your eye on the most, because this could be very polarizing for adapting. I feel like we either see her have an insanely good game or insanely bad games, nothing really in the in-between. So maybe more, again, pressure back onto the jungler to kind of repeat what he just did on Bakasura.
And it's looking like Sanford Soccer, jungler for Ghost Gaming, is going to be working with the Erlang Shen here in Game 3, a pick that has started to see a rise of play and a rise of win rate. It was just above 70% in the 20 or so games played here in Phase 2 overall, so a great pick for Sanford Soccer, provide some good setup there for the rest of the team. And then Xing Chen, a pick that Neo has enjoyed for the Knights, particularly out of that support role. But it's looking like solo Xing Chen here for Benji. Does that instill some confidence in you, especially when you compare, the rest of the draft with Radiance?
I like it. I feel like, especially up against something like a King Arthur, which I'm assuming for Ghost is going to go over there, it almost feels very, this is maybe a shot for people who don't watch, any of the Challenger circuit, but it kind of feels Mando Warrior-esque, where the concept is you're just not going to lose lane, right? You're Xing Chen, you're going to be fine, you're a Guardian, you're not necessarily going to find too many kills, or at least we're not expecting too many kills out of a Guardian versus something like King Arthur, and then late game you get to come in and still do the frontline thing, right? So for the most part, I would argue very similar to like a Jormungandr over here and any of the other Guardians you could see, where he's just going to hold his own until he's needed, and then when it comes into it, Horus, he has a great ult, but it's not necessarily like a team fight initiator a lot of the time. Xing Chen jumps in, blinks in, whatever, and is going to be able to scoop up everybody. Ra then throws in his beam, Uller dumps his damage. It just all synergizes well once it gets there.
Seems like a lot of setup for this Ra out of the mid lane for Radiance. Radiance trying to snap a 4-set losing streak. Ghost trying to extend their win streak to 4. Finch and Aggro will take us in.
Thank you, Dolson and Gore. One more time as we move into Ghost and Radiance. A couple weeks ago, this would have been the headlining set, but after Radiance's slump, I think you'd be forgiven for expecting this one to be one-sided, but so far, it has been anything but. Radiance has stepped up their game, returned to form, and now here in this Game 3, they're top-picking Ra and Horus. Do you like that, Aggro?
It's a little bit odd, but with the way that bans have gone, Ghost really identified the problem parts of the Radiance draft, and I agree with them. It was the Khepri, and it was that Persephone, Keeping Benji off the Wukong also very, very important. This is what's difficult, is that Radiance has been slumping. They finally get a win, and then they're forced to do completely different things in the next game. That is not easy to do. I just feel like Radiance have finally found something that was working for them, and then it gets pulled away pretty quickly. That cannot feel good for them right now.
Probably feels a little bit better when Cyclone Spin forces the beads from Panda Cat early. Usually beads coming out this early is not that big a deal, as Mike ends up pretty low under Aurora's pressure. But when you're up against an Uller Horus, oh yeah, you need your beads. As soon as they're level 2, Panda Cat could die. So not a bad way for this dual lane to start off for Radiance. They'll head back, grab their own farm after letting Cyclone Spin solo push up that wave. And they've done is everything they can to try and get Cyclone Spin ahead and give him pressure over this ROM.
And that's big because Cyclone on the Cupid last game looked so much better than he did on that ROM. That's why Radiance actually decided to ban the Cupid first overall, because they really didn't want to end up in the same position as they were in game 1, where Ghost just first picked the Cupid, force Radiance to take something else. I wouldn't have been surprised if that had happened, if the Cupid had gotten first pick, to see Radiance go with a completely different ADC than ROM, which is heresy to say right now, to pick someone besides one of those two if they're both open. Just kind of the way the set has gone up until this point. Also pretty interesting to note that Aurora has not gone Blink. Normally that is a critical piece of Horus, is going Blink right off the bat in order to set up for Fracture, which is short range engage, though as good as the engage is. He's gone for Horrific Emblem, which is also very good whenever someone doesn't have beads, but in this position I think that lack of Blink is really a relief for Panda Cat with him not having beads early.
No, he doesn't have to worry about the surprise engage coming in from range, though Cyclone Spin and Aurora still doing a little bit of lane freezing, trying to force the fight as they take over to 3 first. Nice stun from range from Mike, avoiding the axe, and the stun coming in for Aurora is Panda Cat, so they're through the worst of it over there in the long lane after the initial start to this dual lane. Both junglers now on this side of the map. Sam on the Erlong adapting on the Pele that's looked so good in Lasbra's hands. It looks like the idea from Sam here is to make sure the purple buff gets secured for order this time.
And that'll be easily done by this Erlong Shen. This sort of pick for Sam, I think, is a little bit different than what we've seen from him before. I think of Sam as, you know, a Willix player, a Thanatos player, a Thor player, Pele. Erlong is not one of those first few that come to mind, but certainly he's proven that he deserves the benefit of the doubt with the way that he's been playing, especially, but also with the way that he's been able to really expand that god pool this year. He's picked a whole lot of different things in the jungle for this squad. So getting him a near the end counter pick and setting him up for something that is a classic combo of the Erlong Poseidon. We actually saw Ghost run this a lot last year, but it was Twig when he was in the jungle on the Erlong Shen, and Panda Cat when he was in mid on that Poseidon. We'll see if they can find as much success as the last year's roster, because I recall a 4-man or 5-man taunt into a 4 or 5-man Kraken happening in one of those matchups one time. I don't think we'll see that, but we've seen some pretty nuts stuff in this set already. Who knows?
It doesn't have to quite be to that level to be good, but certainly could end up happening. We got a couple more looks at that Sam play, and I'm leaning a bit more towards, talking about from game 2 now, towards fortunate than I am towards, you know, lighting it up 100%, but either way, it all counts. And perhaps Sam can find some magic similar to that here on the Erlong Shen, with Captain Twig there backing him up, already level 6 on the Poseidon. And this Poseidon has become more and more a popular pick, I feel like, in mid. It's not just teams, but multiple mid laners are trying to figure out exactly what they can play right now, what kind of mages are viable, because a lot has shaken up in that mid lane role, and there's a lot of different ways you can try and build in that role now too. What maximizes it? What works with your team best? And perhaps it is going to be this Poseidon here for Twig, as he's gotten it done a lot of different stuff, this Poseidon included.
This is one of Twig's signature picks. Whether he's playing mid or not, he played this Poseidon in jungle all the time last year, and you just know that this is a comfort pick for him. I think he's one of the premier Poseidon players in the history of the SPL. He's just done it so consistently on this pick across multiple different roles.
Whoa, I thought Panda Cat was dead for sure, but the roll means he doesn't even have to use the beads. He goes from being dead for sure in my mind to comfortably standing at the tower line. Not bad. And that means Mike is free to roam elsewhere, trusting that Panda Cat can do exactly that in those tough situations. Perhaps they can put some pressure onto Blue. Oh no, but Twig's been caught out. The snipe off the mark there from Tings. Kraken used defensively. And that means now Adapting has used Volcanic Lightning to get away from the Stygian Torment. It works. Adapting dashed out of there with that CC immune ult, and Polar Bear Mike can't grab anything. But now the blue buff invade successful. So I suppose across the map it ends up being in favor of Ghost.
I suppose so, but ends up not feeling that way, I think, at the end of the day when you get Kraken and Stygian Torment both basically nullified by some good ultimate usage by Radiance.
Oh, and poor Sam is able to get the heal off from the 9 turns blessing, and the turtle form gets out. Radiance kind of stopped committing to him, and Sam for soccer still stands. First blood remains unclaimed. He should have been dead there, but somehow able to wiggle his way out.
Very, very close for Sam, and this is something that I've noticed Ghost doing a lot. I thought it was a little bit more matchup dependent. In game 1, we saw Sam taking red buff, Twig taking speed an awful lot. I thought it was because they had the Anubis in mid. He's so vulnerable. He really doesn't need red to one-shot you. Let's give him some more mobility. But it seems like this might just be the strat right now for Ghost. Give that red buff over to Sam.
They do end up getting first blood a little bit later. Great CC near the Oracles, and Mike has no way out. And that is now twice in a row that Radiance appear to be building a lead off trying to bully the support as Panda Cat has to use the ultimate, gets up to the sky, narrowly avoids trouble, but what is he gonna do when he lands? Perfect CC, and the answer is die. Cyclone Spin gets the kill for it, and Radiance now off to the 2-0 start.
Sam will secure that red buff as Twig looks for the solo kill on Tings in mid, gets the beads away from that Raw at the very least, but now he's got to be careful because Aurora's hunting for him.
Aurora ends up using that ultimate to retreat back towards the tier 1 tower, gets to safety. Mike knew there wasn't much more he could do in that spot, but with the Amir, Radiance were willing to pick on him as FinoK gonna try to invade the speed. He will indeed succeed at that, but Benji has collected one Sam for soccer, tries to bring him back towards the squad. Whirlpool there, but the Kraken was already used earlier, so the follow-up isn't there. Radiance can start to retreat back towards their base, but FinoK won't let him. Twig gets the kill as Aurora ends up falling. Now, what about Adapting? He's stuck in a bad spot. Big Snipe comes through, but Twig gets the double kill. Tings cleans up on Sam as Ghosts are fighting way up in Radiance's jungle and coming out the better.
And this is huge for Ghost because not only do they get the slight advantage, they end up stripping away a lot of Radiance's jungle. They get back camps, they get speed buff, and now they're going to get blue buff as well. So even though it ends up being more damage for Radiance, they end up getting less kills, less experience, less gold. That recap right there is a little bit, did not count in that blue buff invade afterwards. It's closer than I thought it would be, so it's not too bad for Radiance, but still, I think the mindset of Ghost is very, very clear in this game. That they aren't going to back down from a Radiance composition that does fight pretty well early between the Ra and the Pele and the Horus as part of your 3v3 mid combo. Doesn't seem to be deterring Ghost up until now.
And how much of this is this Guardian solo over here for Benji? I mean, why does FinoK feel like he has license to just walk up to speed and strip it away? Is it because there's pressure elsewhere, or is it because he's not so worried about this Xing 10 contesting him?
It's both. It's the fact that Twig has already gotten the beads out from Tings in mid, and Tings is low, so he can't really step up and contest, or he has to reset. And the fact that Xing 10 is direct.
Great peel from this Kraken. It ends up setting up for a 2-for-0. How does Sam live again? Houdini continues to pull out the tricks, and they're able to find the 2-for-0. Adapting and Aurora both go down, and Ghosts have started to turn the tide of this set around. It looked like another game where Radiance were going to come in with early momentum, bully the support, and build up a lead, and now Fine is at speed again. They're getting doubles and doing whatever they want.
Big Man's here to try and defend it, but without a whole lot of help from Benji. It's enough to force Fine off, but he at least gets the minis on that speed buff. And Radiance has the right idea. I mean, they are strong on the left-hand side. Cyclone has a noticeable lead in that duo lane, so let's try and invade red. But it just isn't working because of this great play from Twig. He has played so well in this game on this Poseidon. His title surges have been fantastic. Right there, he stopped himself from getting stunned and locked down. Didn't have beads, so he has to be really scared of Aurora stepping up onto him. But he just uses that knockback to cancel out the fracture. That is not easy to do. His Kraken by red was phenomenal. This is where all the pressure from Ghost is really coming from now, is through the mid lane. It's set up both Mike and Sam very nicely because of the space that Twig has created.
It's kind of a joke that when Twig is the one doing well, usually Ghosts are struggling, but this time it's the opposite. He's lifting him up onto his back as PandaCat rolls into adapting, trying to see if he can lock him down. That's enough to force out that volcanic lightning. Snipes will land. Of course they will. PandaCat, plenty of experience playing the ROM, puts it to work there, getting the better of adapting, who's now dropping down to 1 and 3. They are struggling across the map right now, and Ghost looking good.
Really, really difficult spot now for Radiance. I mean, the gold lead isn't massive, but it is noticeable already.
Good ultimate, though, from Mike. That denies some of the CC. He does eventually get knocked up, but he's able to make it out of there. How come Ghost keep escaping these certain death scenarios so narrowly? Well, that time it's because Mike used his ability so well in that snipe. Perhaps a little bit late or expecting more CC there from Tings. Either way, just narrowly avoiding peril has been the name of the game for Ghost throughout this game.
Really, it was the fact that Aurora's fracture ended up a little bit too short. Missing that prot shred ends up being pretty important. I don't know if it would have been enough, but I mean, that would have been 30 prots off of Mike's head. Maybe between the damage coming from Cyclone and Tings, that could have been enough to get the kill.
Sam looking to get aggressive, doesn't get the taunt, but who needs it when FineOK is hitting stuns? That sets up for another kill, and Adapting's bad game continues. Not to say he's himself playing poorly, but certainly not going his way, as they have had so much right-side pressure. I mean, they talked about it on the desk. They weren't so sure about the Xing Chen. Well, I think we're kind of getting our answer. FineOK is doing whatever he wants.
I mean, think back to game 1. It's Benji that puts Radiance's back into this game with that Ama play. And then game 2, his Wukong ended up being so important. I think one of the most valuable players on Radiance last game on that Wukong. Handing him the Xing Chen just feels like you're not giving him the tools to succeed. And that's a bit of a head scratcher.
Gold Fury secured by Ghost. The snipe a little too late there from Tings, even though the Kraken was there too. So probably just didn't have much chance of stripping that one away. And Ghost starting to slowly but surely climb away with this one. 4,000 gold, just about 4,300 experience as well. And that's a pretty hefty hill to climb up 13 minutes into this game, especially with Twig playing as well as he is, with FineOK having nothing to worry about this game. This is going to get worse before it gets better.
I mean, at this point, if you're Radiance, your real only win condition is through duo. So this makes a lot of sense to me. Group up, try and get these purple buffs. But the problem is that Twig is playing this Poseidon that has so much movement speed that it's really easy for him to match a rotation or beat adapting to this purple buff. I don't know that adapting can really afford to spend a lot of time over here because he needs to just worry about getting his own jungle off the map, because if he doesn't, then Fine and Sam are just going to take it for him and get even further ahead. Radiance's composition is not predicated as much on team fighting. This is much more of a pick-based composition, and the way that it's easy to tell that is based on their CC types. A lot of it is single-target CC. Uller Axe, Horus setup, Pele knockup is often only going to be one person. This is designed to execute on one person, and that's what they were doing very well in game number 2 with that Kepri. It was very similar. Root and then Sunder on one target.
Roar looking to get aggressive, but Kraken is there again. Stygian Torment brings them right back towards Twig, but he's all out of CDs. And that means Aurora and Adapting live for now. But Mike wants to change that, ends up forcing Aurora towards mid, and Twig gets the kill. Adapting looks like he might be out of heat, but perhaps he's far enough away. He doesn't really need much more, but Twig's going to come through the top side, as is PandaCat. The ultimate's already down, so they won't be able to kill him with the snipes. Adapting makes it out of there, and that's not as bad as it could have been. as Fine OK maintains control in solo.
At least get Twig's Aegis on cooldown, but he keeps the beads, which is the most important thing about playing against this Radiance comp, is beadsing the Horus setup or the Uller Axe in order to make sure you don't get one-tapped by the Raw Snipe. Without that relic being on cooldown, Twig should still feel very safe. If I were in Twig's shoes, I would be feeling very, very comfortable, even without Aegis, because the really only god that you need to worry about Aegising their damage is the Pele, and she is kind of 5 levels down in comparison to where Twig is.
Cyclone Spin wanting to help them. They brought 4 members over to solo to try and kill Fine OK, who's been such a problem this game. He does get a 4-man stun. That buys time for Sam to come in to peel. Ghost are absolutely nuts. You gotta come correct if you want to take them down. Ultimate comes out from adapting, but Sam lives through it all, shuts down the Pele, and onto the back comes Twig, drops the Kraken, and that's enough to gobble up Benji. Ghost keeps surging forward, and Radiance, 4 ain't enough to take down Fine OK. You better bring everybody.
Give me a break, dude. Instead of killing Fine OK, you get 4 for zeroed instead. That is
absolutely
gross,
nuts,
man. And look, Radiance, they know that that is a high-risk play. They know that that is not exactly the best use of their time, but they know they're running out of time, that they could end up making a play. They have to try and take a high-risk play and hope that Ghost overcommit coming to save them. Not exactly what ends up happening. Instead, they get decided. They get nobody. One person, excuse me, as Fire Giant helps Cyclone Spin at least get someone. Not a position for Radiance to do anything but that. Obviously, they basically lose the game off of that play, but they weren't winning on the current trajectory. You gotta make a play somewhere. I can understand why they tried.
What did you say earlier? You remembered them getting some kind of 4-man taunt? Well, that's pretty close there from Sam off the back of that stun. Not bad at all from what Ghosts are able to do there on that solo side. Fire Giant in their favor. Only Sam doesn't get it, and that is significant, but Ghosts are so far ahead. 9,000 cold, 12,000 experience, and it's only 17 minutes into the game, and this is all real lead, because all of the towers are still standing for Radiance, all the tier 2s at the very least, and 1 tier 1 in duo. This lead's going to get way worse before it gets any better here next time, Aggro. I mean, Ghost, whenever they decide to group, whichever lane it is, looks like it might be left. That's where Mike and Panda Cat are at the very least. I don't know how Radiance plan to defend it. Kraken comes out into a roar here in mid, and he barely makes it out of that with his life.
Close, but no cigar for Twig. Not a lot of pen for him, only 10% coming from that Pythags piece. He goes E-Staff in that next item slot. I'm not a huge fan of E-Staff in general right now. I think they're kind of just better items available for you, but frankly, Twig can build whatever he damn well pleases at this point. It just doesn't matter. He's gonna get the job done almost no matter what.
Just that far ahead, and Ghost should be able to push left, knowing that Sam has 350, but instead they fall back. Adapting tries to keep up the chase with Volcanic Lightning, but Sam gets away. So I suppose now Ghost can regroup and look for the mid-tier 2. A little bit surprised they elected not to pull the trigger and left, but I don't think they had a minion wave up there with them, so they give up on it. Meanwhile, Cyclone Spin wants to push the tier 2 in right, but there's the TP coming in from Fine OK. I think that's the first TP we've seen picked up by a solo laner all set, and it gets some value as Sam drops the beads to try and take care of Cyclone Spin. This does set up for Twig to come in from the top side. No way Cyclone gets out of here. Ghost gets one more pick.
Level 19 on this Poseidon, man. Good grief. How do you deal with this? I mean, Adapting's job is to kill the backline, and he's down 6 levels to this Poseidon at this point. It's just impossible for him to actually win a trade up against Captain Twig at this point in the build. You've got PBM 2 levels up on Adapting. Radiance almost did it once. Don't forget that they were down by about this much earlier on in game number 1 of this set. Great snipes from Panda Cat. Will be enough to make sure that Adapting falls. That was not an easy shot to take. And Panda's been accurate in this game. Thought he struggled a good amount in game number 2, but in this one, he's looking great.
Well, that is all of the tier 2 towers now down. Just the Phoenix is up for Radiance to try and defend, but Ghost is running out of time on this Fire Giant. About another 50 seconds or so that they've got to work with, and it looks like they're going to spend that time resetting, spending some of the gold, 2,400 for Fine, and a plenty there for the other two members as well. So they'll be coming out with even more power spikes on the back of this 2,300 for Twig. So she'll be able to figure out, finish off whatever Penny's working with. Perhaps if you want some percent pan, it'll be an ob shard or something like that to help him out here. They'll be taking this time to reset. Probably going to come back and grab another fire before they look to re-siege.
I mean, Ghost has their pick of the litter right now. This is not an easy spot to be in if you're Radiance, because you just feel like you can't do anything but wait. You just have to maximize your amount of farm underneath the Phoenixes. Ghost, on the other hand, get to just strip all the jungle, take whatever buffs they want, split up as much as they would like. They've just got to wait around, it feels like, for this next Fire Giant to spawn.
FineOK's got him running. Aurora has to ult, and he just can't even do it fast enough. Kraken coming out from Twig is enough to put Aurora in the dirt for now. 30 seconds that he'll be on cooldown. I guess the one benefit of still being level 13, his death timer's not all that long. Ghost's going to now try to hunt down Benji and left. Blink allows him to reposition. And this is free time for Ghost because they're waiting on Fire to come up, so they can afford to chase out Adapting and Benji and see if they can lock them down. Twig is the one right behind them, looking for a decent whirlpool. Benji provides the peel, but Mike and Panda Cat went topside. Stitching and Torment connects, and too much damage from Panda Cat. Adapting goes down. Benji will certainly be falling too, and then Ghost can just group up for fun.
Take their time, go towards Fire Giant. You know, we were in the same position in game 1 before Ghost got FG stolen, and I was thinking about some meme stuff I wanted to talk about, and I had it then, but I feel like I've lost it now. I don't know, game 2 was too competitive, and I kind of lost my train of meme thought. I'll get back to you. I'll think about it for a little bit.
Yeah, I trust you'll be able to find it before too long. Ghost starting up the Fire Giant will secure this one very, very easily. Meanwhile, Radiance just grouping up, taking the farm they can in left, going to push up that wave and take the tier 1. But boy, do they have their work cut out for them, finding some kind of way to defend. I mean, normally you'd think they've got some decent picks, at least with the rub, but Cooler, Horus, Pele, these are all picks that would much prefer to be fighting in the jungle or in the 2v2s as opposed to this 5v5. As Ghost just barrel right on in. They're already taking the right side, Phoenix. It's down to half, and Radiance can't defend it. It just belongs to Ghost.
That's all theirs, and they can go towards mid if they'd like and do largely the same thing. Now, no wave for them here in mid, but I don't think they had much of a wave in right. Didn't take them very long. Worth noting that FineOK does have that teleport, as you highlighted earlier, so this is where TP actually does end up being very helpful, is that he can afford to tank a little bit more and then back and TP in, as opposed to what we've seen out of a lot of Warrior players right now.
Sam comes in topside, looks for the knock-up. Trouble now for Tings. More than trouble, he's dead. Sam Prasaka gets that kill. Benji trying to control Panda Cat in the back, but that's too much damage from the late game. Rom snipes connecting from range. Cyclone spins Aegis, buys him a second, but FineOK won't give him even one more second afterwards. And at this point, it's all about when Ghosts choose to put damage into the Titan, because this game is done. Kraken deletes Adapting. Panda Cat gets that kill. I imagine they want the DSI before they end this one. And Ghost Gaming pretty dominantly take game 3 over Radiance.
I think it was really a draft issue for Ghost in game number 2, and not to take any credit away from Radiance whatsoever. They needed a win badly, and we were talking to Hindu Man before the set today. He said if he were a Radiance fan, if they even lost 2-1, I think you'd be pretty okay with that based on the way that Radiance has played as of late. I agree, getting one win underneath the belt as Radiance and nearly turning around game 1 and having a chance of that, I think that's more than what you can expect from how Radiance had been playing coming into this. So it could have been worse for this squad.
I really feel like we should do something about Sam for soccer. I never want to see Sam below me on any power ranking ever. That's Cheerio, another jungler out there giving Sam some credit for how well he has been playing lately. And as good as Cheerio is, I think I might have to agree with him right now. Sam is doing it better than everybody else in the jungle position right now. So take notes, I guess, because that guy's the best.
He's just been the best, basically all Season 7. I don't think that you can really question it. This Ghost Gaming team has really been driven out of the jungle, and it was no different here today. Though Twig does deserve a lot of credit for Game 3. I thought he was the one that really led the way.
You're right, that Poseidon looks excellent. Ghost is a team looking great as they continue their onslaught on the SPL here in Phase 2. We'll break all that down for you, though, in just a few minutes, right after the break.
Something about these Game 3s over the last couple of days where one team just kind of refocuses and blows the other out of the water. This time around, it is Ghost Gaming in 23 or so minutes in Game 3 that pushes Radiance onto the side, extends their win streak one more game, and Radiance still need to regroup and get themselves back on the winning track. Gormizer with me to finally break down Game 3, finalize this set here. Gore, what'd you see here in Game 3 that gave Ghost the edge? I imagine there are a few pretty obvious answers for you.
I mean, the one that stands true to me, although it didn't really give them the advantage, it's just the last note that they left it on, which is that Radiance had to do Twig dirty and kill him at the very end there when he had a near-perfect game on that Poseidon, which was probably one of the bigger factors, although I think Sam was maybe one of the biggest. Honestly, there's a lot of other highlights in here, and there's one, it's actually right here. I'm going to watch it a little closer, because I think there's still some CC immunity on someone there, or the bubble gets popped, so he gets 4 members of Radiance, with the other one still looking his way anyway. So 4 or 5-man taunt, how you read it. Either way, I mean, just phenomenal. Twig has, after what in the very first kind of zoning didn't hit anybody, Kraken, some really good ultimates, a lot of kills picked up for him as well. It just feels like between him and Sam, Ghost clicked. And unfortunately, the Pele on the other side did not. So there were a couple of things I think that went really well for Ghost, maybe one or two that didn't quite stand up to the way that I think Radiance wanted it to happen. And because of that, they just snowballed and then snowballed and then snowballed until they finally found themselves another early 20-minute win.
Yeah, the 20-minute win will become apparent here with the post-game stats. Final K undying in the final game of the set here. 1-8 for adapting, obviously tough there. Aurora, wasn't able to consistently find, I think, what he was looking for there on the Horus. 14,000 damage for Final K, right up there with Captain Twig. Gore, I am curious where just sort of overall we land on this Poseidon. I mean, it's obviously something that Twig likes to play. It's a niche pick for, I think, some of the other mid laners here in this league. Obviously, you're not going to get this type of game out of a Poseidon every time you pick it. But are you surprised you don't see it a little bit more?
Well, I was actually trying to figure it out because after the last disc, I was like, I feel like I've seen Twig play this before, and I know we saw it a couple days ago, but I was like, I feel like this just is at home for him, and it's because he's done it across other seasons, but at least this phase, he's only played it once before he brought it out twice this week, so he's not bringing it out a whole ton, and a lot of people aren't, but when they are, it seems to be that perfect pick, and I feel like he's in that right niche spot, right, where he's going to be able to come in, be impactful, win a game, but he's not always going to be picked. He's not first pick every single game. So he's right in that sweet spot where I think he belongs, which is just always a surprise when he comes through, but always a happy one at that.
Yeah, I think absolutely makes some sense there. Here are your updated standings after this one. Ghost Gaming closed that gap with SSG. One extra game for Ghost. SSG back in action, of course, next week, so we'll see how that race for first seed ends up panning out here. And then Gore, we mentioned it at the top of the day. The 4th, 5th race is what's very important to look at here. PK 7 and 6, Sanguine 6 and 6. And Sanguine up next are going to be facing off against a resurging Obey to try to keep pace with PK in that 4th place spot.
So the fun thing is that because Radiance lose that one, you're now tied with the Knights. And so things are getting a little bit spicier here towards the latter half of the phase. If Sanguine win, then we have a 3-way tie for 3rd. If they lose, then that gives a little bit more of a cushion for the Knights and for Radiance to try and hang up there. But the fact that our first seed out of Phase 1 has now dropped that far, and Sanguine, and that we're seeing the Knights start to rise up, Radiance, who looked just amazing in the first half of this phase, starting to trip up and fall down the standings as well, it just goes to show that you can't just skip out on anybody. Everybody's got something to prove. Everyone's got something to show. Even more so there. After a 10-loss streak for United, they finally found 3 wins in a row. So I think everybody's in it.
That's right. I'm so busy looking at the race for 4th place, I forget that PK on their surge, a chance to jump up to 3rd place here with another win or 2 and another Radiance loss or 2. But they will have to fend off Sanguine. Right up next, ladies and gentlemen, Sanguine versus Obey. We'll find out if Sanguine can retie things up in that 3rd place spot. Stick around.